Permashelf is a strange thing. Two words mixed together, permanent. Obviously, it's meant to be a concept, and that is a concept of a bottle of whiskey that we've come to love so much that when it's finished, we're eager to replace it. We're eager to put another bottle of it back in the exact same spot. And what that does, especially when we try to force the issue, when we force it into a concept of a shelf that can only hold 10 bottles, it forces us to really focus on the things that we love, the things that are available, the things that are affordable, the things that are full of integrity and deliciousness, and the things that are replaceable. That means with all of those things in place, they are perfectly recommendable. And when someone comes along and says, where should I start? We can guide them to the Permashelf. We have a list of 10 whiskies that we can recommend instantly. That's the idea behind this. I've had to update it for 2026, and I'll explain why it's not that permanent a Permashelf in a second. I'm looking forward to it as always. I'll see you there. I'll see you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thursday night. Welcome to the vPub. I hope, as always, you're doing very, very well. Let me start out by I was doing a wee collaboration with Jeff Whiskey last night, and we got chatting about different formats and different concepts and things on YouTube. And I realised it's a while since I've actually brought up the thing that the vPub is. It's quite a different whiskey outlet on YouTube. It's not typical. Yeah, it's a live stream. There's nothing special about that. Yes, it's whiskey content. Certainly nothing special about that. There's lots of fantastic whiskey content out there on YouTube and beyond. But what we've tried to carve out on the vPub, and the reason that it's a bit long-winded at times, and it's often, especially when it's a solo session like tonight, it's just me monologuing to all of you about whiskey, is that it's meant to be a kind of little bit of downtime, a little bit of ring-fenced whiskey time, where we can hang out together and a wee bit of escapism, maybe, you know, a wee bit of indulgence in our hobby, the thing that we've come to love. Pour a dram, especially for the people that can participate live, like tonight, the people that are sitting in the lounge chatting to each other and chatting to me. That's what it's about. And obviously, what I try to do is talk about concepts and ideas and things that I love in whiskey, things that might prove to be somewhat evergreen, so that people can still get something out of it when they pick it up, watching it on the replay, either immediately after it's gone live or over the days following, or for whenever they're in the mood at some point in the future. So if you've clicked on this video, you're wondering why the runtime is as long as it is. This is because you're in the vPub, the virtual pub. It's a whiskey pub, and it's for us. And I hope you understand that, and I hope that it's okay. If you are picking this up in the replay, hopefully I've done my homework, my housekeeping, and underneath you'll find a list of timestamps and chapters and things, so you can skip ahead if that is your want. Anyway, welcome everyone, and I hope you're all doing very, very well, and you've got something in the glass that you might consider replacing, something that you might consider your Permashelf dram. I'm going to explain what that is a little bit, and explain why a Permashelf is actually not that permanent, because whiskey after all. But we'll do that in a wee second. The first thing I want to do is raise a glass to say Sláinte and welcome you all, and hope you're all doing very, very well. Cheers. Good to see so many of you in. I sent a wee email out tonight, and I did that a couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago. And I noticed that some people find it useful. And I've actually had a couple of messages coming in, people saying, thank you for the email, Roy. I hope that me sending out that email doesn't encourage a lot of people to unsubscribe. I hope they don't find that reminder frustrating or annoying. If you do, I hope you just kind of quickly ignore it and delete it. But I know that everyone's busy and distracted on things, and sometimes it can help remind you that we go live at 9:45. Anyway, what we're going to do is do what we always do and jump into the lounge to welcome some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. The people are joining me live right now on YouTube. So if you're watching on Facebook, thank you, but I don't see the Facebook comments over there. I interact with the chat here on YouTube with the barflies in the lounge. Graham Young from Canada is here. Good to see you, Graham. How are you keeping, my friend? I just realised my mic is a wee bit further away than usual. Hope that's okay. Graham is saying, cheers and good evening, Aquavita. It's a beautiful, warm spring evening here. Hope the same for you folks. It's been a bit of a rainy day, but we can't complain, Graham, because we've had a lot of great spring sunshine up until now. So I think we could have done with a bit of rainfall today. We certainly had plenty of it. Glad to hear it's sunny where you are. Sean is saying, evening barflies. I have dram of the Permashelf Kilkerran 12 in the glass to start the evening, Sean. You're very much on point. How on point you'll see very, very shortly. Derek McGrain on Ireland. Good to see Derek. He's saying good evening, folks. Aquavite. Good evening, Gaffer. Good to have you, Derek, as always, buddy. And Nick Keane in New Zealand, he's celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 57 months, keeping everything ad-free on the vPub. Thanks very much for your support as a member, Nick. 10 bottles of Ardbeg 10 cask strength done. He's fallen in love. He's always been an Ardbeg fan, has Nick. But he's obviously fallen in love with the very recently released Ardbeg 10-year-old cask strength, and it's a very, very easy thing to fall in love with, I have to say. Fairnight Walker is saying, hello, good evening, Roy Aquavite and Barflies. Good to see you all. Permashelf is always great to talk. Interesting to see how it's changed over the years. It's quite interesting, isn't it? How we are talking about something that changes over the years, but we're calling it a Permashelf, a permanent shelf. That's not what permanent means. Gus PW is saying, I think I can always find space for one more on a shelf made for 10 bottles. Prop it up a bit, lay a book and prop up the book and add another couple of bottles on. You know what we're all doing. We're all doing the same thing. Jean Kelly saying, greetings, Roy. Hope your birthday was fabulous. Cheers. It was a fantastic wee quiet day. I actually went to the cinema with my wife. The two of us went for a bit of dinner and went to see a movie, went to see Project Hail Mary. It was quite good. And they had a very quiet night. Whiskey. Well, it was almost whiskey free. I haven't had much whiskey in the last few days, actually. But I ended up having a wee Glenmorangie at the cinema, and they served it to me in a plastic glass, but it was fine. It was fine. And I was able to take it in and watch the movie. I had a fantastic birthday. Thank you, buddy. Whiskey Weekend Ram, Harrow is saying tomato 21 in the glass, not a Permashelf, but a good bourbon matured whiskey. Sounds delicious, Harrow. I hope you're enjoying it, buddy. And Pete Ed is saying, evening, Perma Barman. Good to have you on the Permashelf on Thursday. Thank you, buddy. Good to see you, Pete Ed. I hope you're doing well. I imagine your 10 bottles would all be big, smoky Isla peat monsters, right? Rick Johnson, good to see you, buddy, from San Francisco. He's saying cheers from San Francisco, Roy, and all my Permashelf whiskey friends. Always good to have you in, buddy. Master Chief Sea Chest is saying, Aquaviti, good evening, Roy, and cheers all. That's Mark Hackler, isn't it? Jimmy Legg in Canada saying, hi, Roy, always like this topic. It makes me rethink my picks. I would, does it though? Sure that's Jimmy. So do we have a ringer in tonight? Tom Franey is saying, evening, Aquaviti, there's no Permashelf, just good bottles. Hope you're doing very well too. Absolutely, Tom. Nobody needs to adopt this thing. I don't think any of these literally got a 10-bottle shelf anywhere. It's a concept, it's something, it's kind of one of these topics that force us to think in a certain way about the whiskey that we're enjoying and how we might convey that to others. I think it's a pretty useful thing. We'll see how we get on. Just as it jumps down, I don't want to miss that because somebody was being generous with me there and bought me something nice. I'm way behind in the chat. I need to catch up. Frank is saying, Aquavita, I hope you had a great birthday. Springbank 10 is whetting my whistle this evening. Another one that's very, very on point, Frank. It's actually a spoiler. There's a Springbank 10 that I have in my glass as well, buddy. So I'll raise my Springbank 10 to say thank you so much to you, Frank, for your generous dram, and thanks for your birthday wishes too. It was fantastic. Cheers. Jim Morris is in. Good to see you, Jim. He's celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 38 months and saying, have really enjoyed the last 3+ years. I've loved having you here, Jim. It's wonderful to have you, buddy. Thank you so much for your support. Ledaig also celebrating 73 months. Wow, he's saying, evening, Roy. Hope you had a good birthday and cheers. I did, buddy. I hope you're doing very well. Hope you're keeping well, buddy. And Bruce Bernard, always in. Bruce, good to see you. Celebrating being a member for 51 months, saying 10 degrees here in Australia. A Scottish summer. Absolutely, you're not far off. Obviously, you're well into your winter time now, your cooler months as well, Bruce. I hope you're doing well down there. I need to scroll back up a wee bit because the chat's jumped and I've missed a heck of a lot of stuff out. Jerry Miller is saying, good evening, Roy. vPubs are on my Permashelf list. Jerry, I'm very, very grateful for it. Thank you for joining me every week here. Whisky Lover Society, good to see you, and big guy. Hope you're keeping well. And Greg in Paris is saying, hi, Roy, and everyone. Sorry, mostly on listen mode tonight. Post-working regarding my current art group show, but also preparing whiskey-related videos. Have a nice live chat, everyone. Cheers, Greg. Thank you so much for dropping in. And Toby's saying, hello, Roy, in a tiny glass now due to a cruel early wake-up. I think this will soon become my bedtime slumber podcast. I think I'm picking up quite a lot of people. I'm not picking it up. I've known for years that a lot of people use the vPub as a cure for insomnia, and they just drift off to sleep as I'm banging my gums about whiskey, and that suits me absolutely fine, as long as it suits you. Big Jimmy Jass is saying, hope there's a place for a special celebratory bottle on the Permashelf Aquavitae when birthdays roll around. Yeah, there's always space for something special, right, Jimmy? But what we have, when you've forced to pick only 10 bottles, and all of these 10 things have to be something that you can recommend to somebody, especially someone who's just stepping inside whiskey. I think that we use the special bottles for another topic elsewhere, right? Jeffrey Bangers is saying, hi, Roy, my new Permashelf bottle is going to be a Glen 12 Gloopy. Fantastic. That 12-year-old that came out in the bright blue labelling last year went down very, very well. Fully natural. Wonderful to have a fully natural. All the boxes checked from Glen Scotia at £45. I have to say, spoiler, it almost made the Permashelf this time around. Almost. Maybe it'll change when I get close to the bottom of my bottle. Donnerpass Whiskey, good to see you. Timmy saying, a dram of discontinued Permashelf Bar Blair Vintage, first release. This one is the 05. I loved the old vintages. Isn't it a shame? And one of the things that's forced on us about the Permashelf that forces us not to see it as permanent is when things change on us and when things are discontinued. Tim Lux is in. Good to see Tim. I cracked and shared a certain Swedish single malt on Saturday with my brothers. Good stuff. Cheers, Aquavitae. Tim, I'm really glad you're enjoying it. It's really, really dense whiskey. I think you're going to be quite surprised how much that switches and changes the bottle level goes down. Jimmy Legg is saying, lol, almost whiskey-free. Nice, yeah. Almost whiskey-free. I had the dram of Glenmoe, and I was looking to do, Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday night completely whiskey-free, but Tuesday was my birthday, so I had that wee Glenmorangie at the cinema. But then last night I ended up doing a wee collaboration with Jeff Whiskey, and we rolled out a couple of nice whiskies for that. Hopefully that'll appear at some point in the future on his channel. And Reb is saying, good evening, just got my hands on the Bruichladdich 16-year-old organic barley. Need to compare it with the organic barley 2012. Maybe we'll be chatting Bruichladdich a wee bit later on tonight. Reb, where's Roy in Norway saying, good evening, Roy. Your voice seems in better shape. Ardbeg 10 still remains my only Permashelf bottle, and it's been like that for many, many years. Wow. Let's see if Ardbeg 10 appears tonight. It has appeared in previous Permashelf lists. Alistair says, good evening, Aquavitae. Hope you're feeling better. Yeah, I have to apologise generally over the last few weeks. I've had that scratch thing in my throat and just continually being frustrated and annoyed by it. It seems to have finally taken its leave. Let's keep our fingers crossed as I chat through tonight with you all that it stays away. Happy belated birthday, Roy, then, says Greg. Missed that. I bet it was cool. Did you? I mean, you got the Glenmoe Harrison Ford. No, it was just a Glenmorangie 10. It wasn't even the 12-year-old, Greg. It was just what they had at the cinema. And Pete is saying, actually, one true Permashelf bottle at the moment. Our big 10-year-old. Both one open and a replacement. So we're all susceptible to it, Frank, right? We've all got our guilty pleasures, perhaps, our indulgences, the things that we love. Jimmy is saying, I rethink them and then pick exactly the same ones. Does that convince you that I'm not an imposter? Yes, I'm now convinced. Christian is saying, I've been looking forward to tonight's theme. Earlier vPubs on the same theme has pointed me to great drams I didn't know. So I think for you, if you're early in your journey then, Christian, for you to continue to get value out of the Permashelf vPubs, you're going to be very interested to hear how whiskey changing in the background, how the dynamics of whiskey forcing change on the ranges, the availability, the prices, the quality. That means that it forces us to rethink the Permashelf and forces us to reshare it again based on different light being shed on it. I think the curious thing for me is that you choose 10 bottles because it's likely to be the 10 best available. And then when you sit down to make the list again, and then you compare the list, it's fascinating to see that the reason that the changes are on the list is not because of your whim, not because of your randomness, but because of the whisky availability that's changed in the year or the 2 years since the last time you did the list. And we'll share more about that tonight. And yes, we're saying good evening, Roy. Hope you had a great birthday. Always got a Port Charlotte 10 in the cabinet. Absolute Isla stalwart. Right, it's jumped again, so I'll take these last two comments, and apologies for anyone that I'm missing, but if you're trying to get my attention tonight, I'll be dropping in and out the chat throughout tonight. Just type Aquavite or @Aquavite and it should highlight. Jean Kelly saying, is a perma closet acceptable? Well, if we keep it to 10 bottles, but everybody, there's no, I'll share what my rules are that I've imposed on myself, but you have to go and do your own thing. Andy Hills is saying belated birthday wishes, catch up on the replay. It's a family visiting and just in from a 12-hour shift, Slancha. Andy, here's to you and your family, buddy. Rest easy, my friend. And I hope to see you soon. I'll probably see you at the end of the May, won't I? John is saying, good evening, Roy. 5 drams tonight. All Permashelf. Fantastic, John. Thanks for being on theme. And Jake Lockhart. Good evening, all. Aquavite. Aberlour Rabuna is one of the few bottles I always replace. Just opened batch 42 that I picked up on auction. Jake, I don't know if I've welcomed you here before. It's nice to have you here, my friend. It's nice to have you all here. Thanks for joining me on a Thursday night. So before we get started, let me just explain the Permashelf and my rules for it, the rules that I've imposed on myself. And these rules have changed a little bit since the first ever Permashelf list that came along. And the reason for that is whisky has changed. And the reason that the Permashelf is changing, and it's not really a Permashelf, the reason for Permashelf is just the idea that you're going to have a permanent bottle on there. So it doesn't matter what the fill level is. As soon as it gets to the bottom, you're going to have it in your mind to replace it and pick up a replacement because you love that whisky. When you're in the mood for it, you love to be able to reach for it. You love to pour it for friends, and you love to be able to recommend it to whisky curious people that are interested in picking up something that you feel is nice and worthy of a recommendation. That's fantastic. But I started this in 2022. That was the first time that there was a list that came out with that Permashelf label attached to it. And the 10 whiskies not only betray exactly what I've just described to you, but they betray things that were happening in whiskey in 2022. I'm going to try and explain that a little bit. It was only when the 2025 list came along last year that I decided my Permashelf was going to get a much, much more picky. I was going to focus on single malts. That's fine, as is my whim. I felt that there was enough good single malts out there to fill the shelf with single malts, that we could focus on blends, blended malts, and other types of whiskey on other vPubs. Just focus on the Permashelf being a single malt one. For me, my personal happy place, comfort zone, if you like. So, and I was also going to force out anything that didn't declare that it was fully natural. So if it doesn't state that it's fully natural, that it doesn't add color, that they don't chill filter, I was less precious about age statements, absolutely, but as long as the whiskey was fully natural, it could be included. And that was last year. So I'm going to stick with that this year. And wouldn't you know, I was able to do that because of the sheer amount of choice that we had available, with more natural whiskies being released all the time. And even whiskies that were already natural being enhanced and getting a bit better for various reasons that I think we might be able to touch upon tonight. Let me try and share something with you just to give everybody a little bit of a refresher of these lists as we've done it over the years. I'm just going to skip through this ever so quickly and remind everyone what was on my 2022 list. So we're going back 4 years now when we first did this. Deanston 12 from the Highlands, Glencadam 10 from the Highlands. Always two very, very similar, quite close almost sibling type characters there from those two Southern Highlanders, or let's say a Southern Highlander and an Eastern Highlander there. We also had Ledaig 10 from Tobermory Distillery, a big peat monster in there. Loch Lomond 12-year-old, I actually listed it on the night as the Inchmurren, but take your pick, whether it's the original, Inchmore, Inchmurren. Loch Lomond 12-year-old at 46% is on the list. Ardbeg 10-year-old, I declared that in 2022 as the Guardian of Islay. Craigellachie's 13-year-old from Speyside. I think that was the only Speyside entry. Yeah, it is. Glendronach 12-year-old managed to get in there despite being a 43%. You can see I've tightened the list up a little bit. You might remember that fantastic Langstone blend that came out, Glasshouse. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I loved pouring it blind for people. Very, very high quality blended Scotch whisky made at the Loch Lomond Distillery. It's beautiful stuff. Sporadic availability these days. Dropped off the radar a little bit just because of just how crowded the space has become, especially blends. Orchard House blended malt from Compass Box made the list. And then the last place, and this, when I put this list together, this whiskey would have been only 18 months on the market or so. Ardnamurchan AD. Then it took a couple of years before it needed refreshing or being brought up to date. But in 2024, I had to rethink the list again. And that meant that there was a drop-off of three places were opened up. I removed Glendronach 12-year-old for the reasons I've just mentioned, 43% as well. We know it's chill filtered. We don't know the colour status, but we believe it to be natural colour. But the two blends, the blended malt and the blended glasshouse, I removed as well. And I replaced them in 2024 with a new blend that came along. And the value was just so fantastic. It was difficult to ignore. 6 years old from Thompson Brothers, the TBBSW Thompson Brothers blended Scotch whisky. Now that's coming to the end of its life. I recommend that you stash that you do make that a Permashelf product if you can, because it's going to be one of these bottles that we look back on in the future and say, do you remember how good that little 6-year-old was? It became a bit of a legend. And if it's the product of a mistake, as we believe it to be, it's not going to happen again anytime soon. Then another Islay popped onto the list, and that was the Kilkerran Sanic. It was pouring very well at the time. I was in love with it at that time. I still enjoy it very, very much, and it is a high recommend to me. But we'll see if it gets mentioned again tonight. But it appeared on the 2024 list alongside Glengarry's 12-year-old, 48% ABV from the Eastern Highlander. So that was the three that made it in 2024. But then as it 2025 rolled round, I had to make some space again. And we see we lost some bottles. There was some attrition. Ledaig's 10-year-old, for some inexplicable reason, was omitted. I think we can probably talk about that tonight. Loch Lomond's 12-year-old was ditched. Ardbeg, the Guardian of Islay, I declared it as such, was ditched alongside the blend, the Thompson Brothers TBBSW I've just mentioned. And the other two that I just added to that list as well were also ditched, Kilkerran Sanic and Glengarry 12-year-old. How fickle a whiskey lover I am, right? I mean, that's quite wholesale changes there. 6 spots opening up for the 2025 list. And the reason for that, I believe, is because of the sudden availability. The sense that in 2025, whiskey came back to us again. Prices, quality, accessibility, affordability, everything that you want to talk about, it became less of an issue. So in 2025, we had 6 new entries. Deanston and Glencadam stayed from the original list. Craigellachie 13 and Ardnamurchan AD were the only ones from the original 2022 list that remained. And it was joined by 2 J&A Mitchell releases, Kilkerran's 12 and Springbank 10-year-old. Things that we'd been avoiding for years because we were all fighting over it. We were all, if we did manage to buy them, they were being hoarded. We probably had more than we needed for those that could get their hands on them, and those that couldn't get their hands on them was probably priced out of it by gouging retailers, depending on the market that you are in. Inflated prices on secondary, all of that nonsense that seems to have settled now, and I'm very grateful that that's the case. So it was easy to add 2 of our most precious, delicious single malt whiskies onto the list in 2025. And that joined a brand new entry, Ardnahoe's Infinite Loch. I put that forward as being a brand new Guardian of Islay. You might remember that it was also my whiskey of the year in 2025. It would be weird if it was omitted. Also joining it was the sherry entry, if you like. It's previously been held by things like the Thompson Brothers TBBSW, you know, something with a big sherry hit. And I chose last year the Speyburn 15-year-old, which probably would have been right ahead of or imminently before they went ahead and changed their specs. Everything's gone downhill at Speyburn, and we can probably touch upon that tonight. Benromach cask strength, a nice big beefy Speyside, a big meaty high strength potent dram in the list. I think it was worthy. Obviously, it's very, very batch driven, but the consistency of quality is always very, very high. And also a little pet bottle for me, something that I love very, very much. Altmore's Fully Natural Foggy Moss 12-year-old. So that was the 6 that appeared in 2025. Now, obviously, that means that I'm going to share with you another 10 whiskies tonight. You're going to see some continuity. You're going to see some new entries as well. But before I went live, I asked my guardians and asked my patrons and I asked my supporters to just sit down and write your own list, write your own 10 bottles, put some thought into it. It's not going to be easy to do when you're forcing yourself to just pick 10 bottles. It can be a bit tricky. Depending on where you are in your journey, it's going to get harder and harder and harder the longer that you accumulate bottles and the longer you find bottles to fall in love with. And then what we'll do, maybe if I remember at some point later on tonight, once I've revealed my 10 bottles to you, I'm going to ask everybody to just put a number in the chat. Say, Roy, 4 of your 10 bottles were also on my list. Roy, 2 of your 10 bottles were also on my list. Whatever that number is. And that is going to give us a kind of quick, kind of flash, toe in the water, if you like, on where we lie when it comes to consensus. Is this me? Is this just me that loves these 10 bottles? Or is there a lot of overlap here? And have we found consensus on where good quality whiskey lies? Things that we like to replace. So that's the idea. Tim is saying, love Altmore 12, and it was one of the 2 that put me down the Scotch rabbit hole at the beginning. The other being Aberlour but so hard to find here now, Aquaviti. I've noticed a lot of Aberlour on secondary. Somebody mentioned that they'd picked up was it batch 42 or something like that? We're way beyond that. We're at least double that number now in batches. But depending on what you're after, as long as it's not too old, from too long ago, you'll be able to pick up Aberlour on secondary. Tim, I don't know if that's an option for you, buddy. But it used to be one of the bargains out there in whiskey. It's probably 10 years now since that jumped up in price significantly. Anyway, let's go on. I know there's been some spoilers already, but let's go on with filling my imaginary Permashelf that I have over my shoulder here. What we have, cleared a bit of space so that as we go through the bottles tonight, we can keep lining them up. Look, I know they'll be in the background, they'll be out of focus, they'll be a bit distant and things like that, but it'll just give us a kind of visual reminder of where we're sitting. And throughout tonight, rather than me just make hard decisions, I've got some head-to-heads, and we'll maybe pour 2 drams together and try them side by side and kind of decide which one's finally going to make it through in these kind of head-to-head type challenges. The first one I'm going to pull up is going to surprise no one, not least because I've already mooted that it's going to be here. But I think that now that it's available, probably one of the most available J&A Metro products out there. It languishes on the shelf a wee bit longer. Languishing is the wrong word. It remains on the shelf a wee bit longer. There's less fervour for it. There's less scrum activity going on for J&A Metro products right now. And the quality of this thing is always, always surprising to me, just how good it is. If you stay away from it for long enough and then you pour a wee glass, it instantly reminds you of how gorgeous it is. I'm speaking about Glengyle's 12-year-old Kilkerran. 46% ABV. On the back, it talks about a little bit about the history of the distillery and things like that, but it tells you non-chill filtered, no added colouring, all the specs are in place. And, you know, depending on where you are, 50, 55, 56, 58 pounds, that type of price. Certainly in the 50s now. It's some places maybe around 50, I think. But this is 12-year-old Campbelltown single malt of the highest quality. I think for you to find a higher quality malt at 12 years old anywhere at this price point, you would be severely challenged, especially something that is a large outturn, something that is a core release product such as this. Kilkerran does have a tiny bit of smoke, not for me. It is more, it's got a lovely kind of slightly savoury edge to it. But it's also one of those Janie Mitchell products that's very, very dense in flavour, almost compact. But I think out of all the Janie Mitchell range, the Kilkerran releases have the ability to have an almost elegant nature to them. The fruits brighten and lighten. The top notes are allowed to come in a little bit. I think it's always disarming, always endearing, and it should always be on anyone's shelf. Now, when it comes to recommending it to somebody, I do expect some pushback in the comments about people talking about availability. I have to make my rules for my Permashelf, and you can make your rules for your Permashelf, whatever, if you make up your list, what you're going to have on there and how you're going to define accessibility. But I was in good spirits company weeks after this was released, very recently, and the Kilkerran 12 was still sitting on the shelf at my local retailer. If I was to go online right now for Kilkerran 12, I could pick up a bottle and have it delivered. This whisky has come back to us, and it's wonderful to see, and it's wonderful to see its continued quality. Yes, you're going to see differences on colour, how dark or how light it might be from one batch to the next, but that's all about the natural colour of the product. They're not going for consistency of colour. They're going for consistency of quality and consistency of flavour. So it's easy to pop. Just keep it in shot there. Kilkerran 12 is number 1 on the list. What say you? Jalpin. I always worry about how I'm pronouncing your name. Jalpin, we're 1-1 on the shared bottle so far. Okay, we have some consensus already. Jimmy Leig is saying at any price point, Aquavitae. And Whiskey Weekend Ram, Harrow Stain, still the 16-year-oldest Permashelf for me. Said I would open a 12-year-old last time around, but did not yet. Have to set it right soon. So, listen, Kilkerran 16's been my whiskey of the year. I think it's an absolute beautiful bottle, right up until the most recent release, which I feel is just a little bit too heavy-handed on the sherry cask. It's taken it away from that lovely, delicate top note, bright fruit thing that I was enjoying at the beginning. Almost like that lovely kind of Madeira sponge cake lightness about it. Now we've got this really quite heavy, dense fruit loaf type thing. Still a fabulous, fabulous whiskey, but it's moved a little bit away on the 16-year-old from my favourite style. Cheers, Harrow. Dave the Brave is here. Good to see you, buddy. Saying for me, probably the best core range whiskey there is. More consensus. And Jimmy's saying if Kilkerran 12 wasn't on the list, you'd definitely be getting the virtual slap. Overland Drams Chuck is saying after this week in Texas, I can say that Balcones has reserved a safe space on my Permashelf. It's very easy to fall in love with something when you're in a place that it's made. Absolutely, Chuck. That's where I developed a love for Balcones as well. I think it's fantastic. Gene Kelly's saying fully on board with Kilkerran 12. Too bad the retailers are profiteering. Sorry to hear that, Gene. I know that you're out in the States. Complain to your retailer, call them out, name them in socials. Whether it's the retailer or the supply chain, the wholesaler, it needs to be called out. Scott Thor is saying the best. Simply my fave. God bless Kilkerran 12. Fantastic, Scott. Good to see you, buddy. And it's nice to see that you enjoy it. Ginger Genius is saying 1 for 1. I have a feeling I'll do better on the Permashelf than I do on the quiz. There is a quiz tonight, of course there is. I hope you're still here for it, John. You might be surprised. So it's easy now to segue into the second one. Gavs Drams is here. Could you please get it delivered by a drone? Could you get it delivered by a drone? Not really. And Greg is saying he's tried a batch of 2025, if he's not mistaken, of the Kilkerran 12 and was fairly disappointed versus my 2016 batch. I was somehow unbalanced and lost complexity, etc. So I'm worried for its replacement. I think that if you're going to go almost 10 years between batches, then any kind of flavour drift or anything that's happening is maybe going to be quite a high contrast, right? I remember the original 2016 release, Greg, being very, very bright and light and coming from literally only 12-year-old stock, whereas maybe these days they're adding in a little bit more cask activity, maybe some older stock, that type of thing, and it's going to change from one release to the next. Please stay invested in it. I guarantee you're going to eventually fall in love with it. Maybe go back and try it again. Anybody at your whiskey shop? Mike is saying, only one spot for Campbelltown on my list, and sadly it isn't Kilkerran. Well, let's see if we can keep you interested, Mike, with the next one. My Permashelf is too agnostic to line up with Aquavitae. Way too much bourbon, Irish, etc. to get too many matches. But that's the thing, Steve. And when I talk about how tough it is to pick 10, I've made it a bit easier for myself by just kind of clearing the road ahead a little bit and focusing on single malt Scotch. But I think that it's also easy for me because it's what I've got most exposure to. Josh Pench is celebrating being a barfly for 60 months and saying I love the annual Permashelf vPub. Josh, it's wonderful to have you here and I'm glad you enjoy it. Rick is saying he can't get the Kilkerran 12 for for $105 here. Yes, lucky. So that's about £75, would you say? Wee bit overpriced, Rick, but depending on what you pay for other things, it might be worthwhile. Where's Roy saying accessibility is the main reason I don't have a Permashelf. And to only be separated from Scotland by the North Sea is frustrating. I know, and you've been in Norway, with the rules around Norway, some of the Nordic countries are a little bit fussy, Sweden as well. We just need to try and work with it when we're traveling and pick up the gems, don't we, Roy? Henrik is saying Kilkerran 12, yes. McLean's Nose too, though. Ooh, you're enjoying McLean's Nose? Fantastic, great value, wee blended whiskey. It's not made an appearance on the Permashelf yet. David Barnes is saying now I put a Springbank 10 next to Kilkerran and you'll be my mate forever. And Annabelle Plowta, good to see Annabelle. She's saying, Ian Roy, I hope to see some sort of independent bottling in your Perma. The problem with independent bottlings, despite the vPub I did last week, when we talked about core range bottling, small batch and things, where it's blurring the lines between independent and official. If I start to put independent bottlings in the Permashelf, I have to be very, very careful and be able to justify it purely for that availability thing, Annabelle. You can hear the kind of pushback that I'm getting when I start to talk about Janie Mitchell's Springbank and Kilkerran, right? Anyway, Dave Barnes, we share the same birthday. We can now be better mates. We can be better friends because, of course, what I've got in the glass tonight is the wee dregs of my Springbank 10-year-old. Just get the rest of it in there. There's a wee dribble left. And as if to prove I've already cracked and taken a neck pour out of a replacement Springbank 10-year-old. It's going to be a slightly different batch, of course it is. And you can see over my shoulder here, thanks to my friend, my very generous friend Andy, we've got another wee gift up here on the shelf. So I can relax a little bit. I don't need to panic or be too greedy about picking up the next orange labeled Springbank that I see on the shelf. I've got plenty to keep me going for a good while now. And I'm in a very, very, very good space for it. These do change year to year. They do change from one batch to the next, but they never change to be terrible or the minimum quality is always very, very high. This one I'm just about to top up with is a different batch. It's very, very difficult to see. This is 10-year-old Springbank, written in tiny little. So this is November 2024, and that is on the back of a January 2022 bottle. So we are going to get some slight differences, but not much at all. This is probably going to be the hardest bottle for you to get a hold of out of the entire Permashelf tonight. However, much in the same way I justified what's happening with Kilkerran, to a lesser extent, we are seeing something similar with Springbank. But because it's got the Springbank name on the bottle, it's going to go quicker. If people go into a retailer and they see a Springbank sitting there, even if they've got a bottle at home, right, there's a good chance that they're going to be tempted to pick it up, knowing that they might not be able to just go in and replace the bottle when they finish whatever one that they have. These are the types of whiskies that you do kind of have to be a little bit kind of pragmatic and say, well, I've got money here that I could get something new and exciting, but there's a Springbank 10 there and I love the stuff. Let's treat myself. Let's buy a wee backup for my Springbank 10. I would say before COVID, it was already tricky. You couldn't just walk in and pick up Springbank. You couldn't. But COVID really, really exacerbated the availability issues, drove the prices up. People were buying Springbank purely as a, and it still happens now, but it's crazy when it happens on the core range and the 10-year-old and things like that. People buying Springbank simply just to take it along to the auction and make money on it. We're past that now. If you try and sell this on secondary, you might make a few pounds, 3, 4, 5, 6 pounds or something. It's really not worth it after fees and all the rest of it. But what you are doing is you're being a bit of a charitable soul, because if you put it in auction, it means that people can pick it up for a few pounds more, cheaper than their local retailer often, and get it shipped out to wherever they are from the auction site. So it is a good way to still pick up these bottles, but please don't overpay. This stuff is delicious. You would get into pub fights forever and a day to argue whether or not it's going to be Kilkerran 12 or Springbank 10 is your favourite. It comes down to mood, moment, personal preferences, whether or not you can get it often. But to have a scenario where we can pick up Springbank 10-year-old again, and for Springbank 10 not to feature on the Permashelf would be ludicrous. I was saying, I have the 2018 in the glass Aquavitae, had a sample left. Good stuff. Highland Robert Stewart is saying, come on, Roy. Derbyshire's Wireworks has to be on the shelf in 2026. You know, let me say this. I've focused on Scotch malt whiskey tonight. Single malt Scotch, not just Scotch, single malt Scotch. I've been very picky, Stuart. The first bottle to go on the shelf that wasn't single malt Scotch would absolutely probably be, and you could pick any number of releases. The Caduro, you could pick, I mean, we should focus on core range, obviously. We should focus on things that you can actually get. The Bourbon Cask release, it would be a Wireworks. It would be something from White Peak Distillery, because it's just fantastic liquid and it's getting better all the time. So yeah, a very, very strong honourable mention, Stuart. Good to have you in, buddy. Justin Wanna saying, good evening, everyone. Just got back from work. What have I missed? Only the 2 Janie Mitchell entries, Justin. Springbank 10, says Greg. Only one slight disappointment, bottling in 25 years. Batch variation-wise, that speaks volumes. I have never had a disappointing bottle of the Springbank 10, Greg. I've never had it. I've had some that were sparklers, really high on tropical fruit, really lots of top notes and complexity that comes in from time to time. But even the ones that don't have that are still really very, very high on the quality list. Jalpin is saying it's always the opinion, but buy all the stock of independent bottling to keep it on the Permashelf. And Ginger Genius John is saying 2 out of 2, come on, your beauty. He's treating it like a quiz. Jimmy Like is saying, your top 2 are my top 2, so you seem very wise so far. I'm not doing this in any particular order, by the way. It's just the way that it's coming out. Let's move on, because it's time to do a wee head-to-head. We're spoiled for choice today. Absolutely spoiled for choice. If I just focus on single malt Scotch like we're doing tonight, still difficult for me to pick 10. And there's so many things out there that I want to include, so many things that I want to hold up that I feel are worthy, and they should be on the Permashelf. They will be on my Permashelf. But if I focus on keep to only 10 bottles, it's going to be tough, and that means there's going to have to be some attrition. So I'm going to hold up 2 bottles right now that are going to go head to head, and only one of them will be put through, and the other one will stay languishing just to the side of the Permashelf. And that's going to be a bit of a shame, because the 2 bottles that I'm going to put head to head of, like I say, they've been on there from the very, very beginning. They're very, very similar in flavour, style, and profile, but I guarantee you when I put them together in the glass together, they're going to taste a bit different. Let's put together this one I opened very recently on the vPub, the brand new Glencadam 10. Now I've got an open bottle of the previous branding Glencadam 10 over there. You might remember I opened them and tried them head to head. And the one that's been open for a while has kind of lost a wee bit of its vibrance, I was suspicious of. So I think I need to be fair. And if I'm going to do a head to head, I'm going to do a head to head with a freshly opened bottle against this fairly freshly opened Deanston 12. Now look at this. This is quite dark. This particular Deanston 12 is pretty dark. Again, there's a lot of colour variation in this as well. But before we go off panicking that this is lots and lots of sherry added to this, you can often get some very, very dark, rich colours from first fill bourbon too. So let's not read too much into it. Let's put the Deanston 12, just a little pour. We really don't need much at all. Alongside Angus Dundee's Glencadam 10 from its brand new fancy blue pyjamas, right? The liquid inside, by the way, in my opinion, has not changed at all. I think the quality is still absolutely fantastic. So you can really see quite a significant colour difference there. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but here in front of my eyes, it's really, really quite different. Let's give my wee nose. Oh, big hit of honeycomb candy. Really sweet nose, honeycomb. We have a crunchy in the UK. It's the honeycomb covered in chocolate. It's really good. Wow, really, really reminiscent of that. So there's a wee kind of toasted note as well. Yeah, everything's kind of quite confectionery and sweet coming out of the nose in this wee Deanston tonight. Almost like a little bit of toasted coconut as well. Quite malty, quite floral too. Little bit of a kind of puff of white blossom or something. Not like potpourri, but maybe like kind of almost like a laundry detergent type note, but in a nice way. Quite outdoorsy, but sweet and confectionery. Let's nose the wee Glencadam now. Oh, wow, that's completely different. This is even more floral. Lots of sweetness here too, but everything is lighter. So we go into a little bit of light sweet citrus on this, light honey. Lots of kind of, it makes the, probably if I go back into Deanston now, the floral notes will be, wow, that's quite incredible. So I was getting floral from this, but there's so much floral notes on the Glencadam that it sends me back into the kind of syrupy honeycomb type notes on the Deanston. My mouth's watering. These are both charming, pretty whiskies, delicious. Let's go with the one I perceive to be a wee bit lighter first, the Glencadam. Light, soft, ethereal, delicate. A little bit of detail. Really clean, really pure. Zero flaws, zero imperfection. Just like that Glenmorangie I enjoyed at the cinema on Tuesday night, Glenmorangie 10, but with texture and weight and roundness and heft and a much longer finish. Okay, let's go into our wee Deanston now. The Deanston's been asked to work quite hard. Oh, goodness me. Not fair. Not fair. This is really, Deanston's really nice as well. Really, really nice. It's wonderful to go back to that. Do you remember the advertising campaign for those of you in the UK about 20, 30, 40 years ago? Cornflakes, you know, have you forgotten how good they are? And we're all chasing our super sugary honey toffee nut cereal, whatever nonsense it was. Plain old cornflakes were being forgotten about. and everybody forgot how good they were when we just went back and realised that cornflakes were good. That's a terrible, terrible analogy, isn't it? But it's kind of like it's going into that right now. This is why I replace Deanston 12 when it's finished, because it's such a solid, reliable, easy, right in the middle of the flavour map, value map, accessibility map, everything. None of that kind of perfumey floral thing is happening on the palate. I think the Glencadam has taken over all of that stuff. What we have in the Deanston is a rounder, richer, slightly thicker Southern Highland malt. On the Glencadam, we've got something a bit more, top note, a bit more spritzy and fizzy. But I've got to make a decision because there's only one slot. I've got another 7 bottles of whiskey to share with you after this. So I've only got one slot for either the Deanston or Glencadam. There has to be some attrition tonight. Both are identical price. This might seem cruel, this might seem horrible, but this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the Glencadam forward. Why? Because there are not enough 100% bourbon matured whiskies out there in core ranges. I've talked about Glenmorangie, and there are other 100% bourbon matured whiskies out there, but there are not many. We know Glencadam tend to be that. So if you're sitting down with someone and if you want to give them those extreme points on the flavour map, the bandwidth of things, bourbon cask, sherry cask, smoke, peat, you can pick up that Glencadam 10 and give them a sense of that really light, easy, soft, almost kind of grassy, hay-like outdoor floral hit. The Deanston is just that little bit richer and the contrast is less there. That's nothing bad about the Deanston at all. In fact, it's a very, very positive thing. But if I was going to try and cover as much of the spectrum as possible to share with people, I think the Glencadam makes more sense. If I'm going to cover more of the spectrum to suit my own personal mood, and imagine that the Permashelf is just a 10-bottle selection, the Glencadam also makes a wee bit more sense. That's a wee bit of a shame, isn't it? But it's a good whiskey, fully natural, says so all over the label, critically, and it deserves it. Justin Wan is saying, is Deanston 12 not 100% ex-bourbon? We believe it to be. Let's see if it tells us on the label these days. Balna River Teeth, unchill filtered, yes, and aged in ex-bourbon casks for 12 years. So when I first held this up and talked about the darker colour, I was careful to warn everybody, let's not get too excited and consider there's sherry in this. We get darker colours from bourbon casks too. Bourbon casks can be very active colour-wise. And we can see that this particular batch of Deanston 12 is actually very dark. So you're spot on, Justin, 100% bourbon casks. 3 for 3 so far, says Yalpin. That's good, that's fantastic. Simon Ray is here, good to see you, Simon. How are you keeping? He's saying, you introduced me to Deanston 12 through the channel more years ago than I care to remember. It will always be on my Permashelf. That's amazing, buddy. I remember when I first appeared on video, it was at a time that I was particularly enamoured with and in love with Deanston. And it was at a time that they were extending the range and started to bring out a lot more of limited editions and things that were special to the distillery or exclusive to the distillery. Right on the back of the 20-year-old Oloroso that you might remember with the slightly kind of brown label on it. It was really quite fantastic. It became a wee bit of a legend. But it was at that time that I was reminded about just how good and solid Deanston 12 had become. And that was after a few years of following the fully natural path. And it was brilliant to see. Jesper is saying, do you know the makeup of the Deanston Virgin Oak? Do you mean cask maturation? Because the Deanston Virgin Oak is non-age statement, much younger than Deanston 12. I would believe it to be at 7 or 8 years old, but from virgin oak, American virgin oak. Ginger Genius John is saying, Mayday, both on my Permashelf. So 10 out of 10 is out the window. No, it's got to be a good thing, right? It's got to be a good thing. Doodle Drama is saying, oh, I see, because they are both there, that means that something else is not going to be there. I'm not thinking, of course, John. Of course. Doodle Drama Arnie saying, this reminds me that even 2 years into the whiskey journey with the barflies, I've yet to try Deanston. I think it's time. You don't need to worry about fast tracking everything. You're going to get there. Excess to Scotch is saying the Deanston 18 is the best. It's certainly the best value. For me, and I know I'm a bit of an oddball on this one, I think I would pick the 12 over the 18. I think the 18 can just be a little bit, in my experience, just a little bit 1 or 2 degrees on this too sweet side for me at times. Very mood dram, whereas the Deanston 12 is, yeah, anytime. Thank you, Excess to Scotch. Good to see you. And okay, so we're getting on okay. We've got our 3 spaces. We've had a head-to-head to mark out one of them, but I'm going to clear off another couple of, let's call them obvious things. Really obvious things that they've been on the Permashelf since the beginning, and I don't see anything pushing or budging them. I'm going to get one out the way quickly, the one that I'm likely to take the most heat on. And the reason for that is because I'm always banging on about this whiskey, and that's okay. I just happen to love it. I don't need to pour one of these because I've already poured 3 drams now, so I'm not going to pour these, and both of them have been poured fairly recently on the vPub. But they are 2022's list, 2024's list. There wasn't a Permashelf in 2023. At that time, I didn't imagine it was going to be an annual concept. 2022, 24, and then 25, the 3 Permashelf lists to date, and 2026, the 4th list. These are going to appear. The first one is Ardnamurchan. Now, you could replace this Ardnamurchan with lots of other variations. They've got their various cask releases. They've had a rum cask. They've had sherry cask releases on a couple of batches. They've had Sauterne. They've had 10-year-old now with a 10-year-old age statement on it. They've got Heritage Grain Series, the Golden Promise release that was out. They've got so many. But I keep coming back to, and I've talked about this in a recent vPub as well, the humble little Ardnamurchan AD. People think this is overhyped, right? Hype is not when you're enthusiastic and you really love something and you talk about it. That's not hyping something. Hyping is literally taking something from a level where it's due to be where it belongs and artificially hyping it to a place that it perhaps doesn't belong. So this is not hype, but this is genuine passion and enthusiasm for a product that I see only getting better. Yes, I know that I talk about when I fell in love with that first ever inaugural release, how kind of spirit forward and minerally and delicious it was, and how precious it was, and about the last few drops I've got of that bottle. But every time I've picked up one of the standard AD releases, whether it was the ones that originally had the numbers on it or the slightly new branding here, where they're just calling it AD now. There's still a batch number on the back label now, by the way. I think it's in very small print. I don't know if it does still have the batch number, but it has the QR code on the back, so you can learn everything you want to know about it. 46.8% ABV for Ardnamurchan's core range products. This is always, for as long as this is available, and at the price point that it is right now, it's actually dropped down a little bit in price. It's at 48 and less. So they're managing to get a really quite competitive price point on this product now. For as long as it's available and tasting as good as it is, I can't see where else I can go to get a minerally, seashelly, outdoor, bright breeze of a very typical, lightly smoky Highland whiskey. This is quite a unique spirit. Ardnamurchan, generally speaking, is really quite special, I have to be honest. And it's almost it doesn't matter what you put. You might get a bit less Ardnamurchan if you put it in a PX cask. You might get a bit less if you put unpeated in a very active cask, something like that. But the Ardnamurchan spirit seems to be robust and strong enough to work with almost any wood that it goes into as well. However, forget all of that. This is the humble, core range, entry-level product, and I would recommend this to anyone. Easy to put on the shelf. I can see that we're going to run out of space here, but that's okay. Let's keep filling it up. It's 4 out of 5. If you can go to Bruichladdich for all of that, just better aquavitae. I know that I don't need to encourage you to hang out a wee bit longer tonight, but we may have a chitty chat about Bruichladdich a wee bit later. Donna Pass Whiskey saying, yeah, I prefer the Deanston 12 to the 18. Glenmurray 18 is my preference over the Deanston 18. Now, it's been a wee while. I think I've still got some dregs of a Glenmurray 18 up on the shelf, but it's a wee while since I've visited it, buddy. It's nice to be reminded of things. And a wee drams come in from Glennis Maid. Good to see you, Glennis Maid. It's nice to have you. And he's saying, hey, Roy, been a while. But here, Bruichladdich 10, Kilkerran 12, Arran 10, Blair Athol 12, Deanston 18. That's my basic list. See, it's tough. It's tough, isn't it? Because you've got yourself, and I suppose it depends on where you are in your whiskey journey, how many bottles you've fallen in love with over the years. But just kind of quick shooting from the hip, I see that we're maybe going to get some overlap tonight. Glennis Maid, thank you very much for your dram, my friend. It's nice to have you as always. George McLeod is saying that's one for the AD. So George obviously had that on his list. And Doodle Dram is saying nothing hits as good as a dram to enjoy. Outside is Ardna Cask Strength Release, defo a Permashelf whiskey for me. I'm glad that we agree. And the Cask Strength is always available. I think we've had how many? 3 batches of the Cask Strength out now? I'm not very sure. But I think that a Cask Strength is a little bit like taking this, adding a little bit more peat smoke, and then bringing in obviously that higher ABV for the Cask Strength. £65, I think, for the Cask Strength as well. Fantastic, Arnie, and glad that you're enjoying it. Whiskey with Molly, how about Boona 12 has ever made your list is beyond me. Let me just, there's going to be a couple, because there's another one alongside Boona having 12 that people are going to get annoyed about that's not made the Permashelf ever. It is not a Permashelf that I'm going to force on everyone, of course. It can't be. It's my personal Permashelf. And I'll be honest, I'm drawn less to sherry matured whiskies. And if I am enjoying a sherry matured whiskey, which Boona having 12-year-old tends to lean towards sherry maturation and profile and flavour, it has to have a bit of detail, a bit of complexity, something interesting in there. Sometimes for me, sherry can flatten things and round things and make things a little bit soft and flat, and it often doesn't engage with me. Now, Boona having, to suggest that is what Boona having 12-year-old is like would be unfair to it, because I've enjoyed lots of bottles of Boona having 12-year-old over the years. It has literally been a Permashelf bottle here. But if I was to restrict myself to 10, it doesn't make the list because of my personal preferences. I'm going to be drawn much more to kind of either a mix of bourbon and sherry, or far more likely bourbon. And you might see that in the lineup tonight, although I have forced myself to make sure that there's a sherried slot in there tonight. I always have. I find it easy to not include Boona having 12 because there's other things from that stable, that portfolio. There's other things in Scotch whisky generally at that price point that I would put ahead of it. But one size does not fit all. No one needs to go along with my recommendations. You're going to see things in my lineup that you prefer less, and you can switch out and pop in your Boona having 12. Alongside another one that you're going to shout at me for not including tonight. At least one other. Greg is saying, as much as we love a Permashelf bottle or concept agravity, unfortunately, some big distillery owners do their best through rebranding to discourage us by withdrawing natural presentation, and it's worrying. I think we're going to talk about that tonight. There's one in particular that I'm forced to discuss tonight. Graham Stevens is saying Aquavitae, no Permashelf for me. I've never repurchased a bottle. Too much to explore still, especially being into independent bottlings. Certain distilleries might qualify though, as always have on hand. Graham Stevens, it's nice to have you in here, buddy. It's nice to welcome you. You are typical of the majority of the people that hang out in the vPub. We all lean, and myself included, much more interesting, transient, small batch, single cask type releases, and that draws us closer and closer towards independent bottlings. But when we are in the realms of, nostalgia, bottles that we've fallen in love with over the years, bottles that we want the ability to easily recommend to other people, there still remains for most of us, for the majority of us, things that we would be quite happy to always have around. If we do find ourselves with too much choice, too much selection, the concept of a Permashelf becomes just an ethereal idea rather than a physical manifestation of 10 bottles of whiskey. But the Permashelf could exist in your mind. You sit down with somebody and say, where do I start? Really enjoying this glass you've poured me, really enjoying the whiskies I've been trying. I'm going to buy a few bottles and I'm going to take them home and try them. So you're not going to be able to say, oh, well, I just picked up a Charlton whiskey, 9-year-old Kalila that was finished in Palo Cortado. I paid £79 for it or something like that. You might be able to find that. You have to give them something that they can literally click online or go into their local whiskey specialist and buy. So that the Permashelf can also be quite a nebulous thought process rather than a physical thing as well. I hope that makes sense, Graham, and it's nice to have you in, buddy. Anyway, talking of Permashelf, something that if it didn't appear, I know I would get a huff drawn, but it's easy to include this because I want to include a Speyside in the mix. I want to include a whiskey that I can talk about some of the kind of more geeky things about it when we start to take things beyond nosing and tasting and we go into the realms of texture and things like that. It's nice to have physical things that you can pour and share with people as you talk about these concepts. Does anyone know what I'm going to hold up? Of course, it's a Wormtub distillery. It's a Speyside. It's fully natural and it's become a modern classic. I would say there are a few distilleries out there in Speyside that can come close to this, that can compete with it and match it. Benromach, Altmore, quite a few others, but not many, not enough when you consider there's 54 or so Speyside distilleries today. It's amazing how peerless this Craigellachie 13 has become. It was on the first list in 2022 and it's never been off since. You can pay north of £50 for this. It's one of the more expensive flagship entry-level core range products. It can get up to 58, 59, maybe 60, 62 even, I've seen it. But we have to remember it's also a teenager. It's 13 years old. It's just a wee bit older. It's not a 10 or a 12. It's 13 years old. And the quality, I don't think you'll ever feel shortchanged. Graham is saying, absolutely agree. I've used your Permashelf concept to recommend to others before, such as the Glencadam 10. Fantastic, Graham. It's nice that even although when it's a kind of silly, whimsical thing, that we can still enjoy using it as a topic to chat about, especially if it's got a practical application like being able to recommend whiskies too. What whiskey can I buy? What's your favourite whiskey? What's the best whiskey? All of these questions that we get hit with as being the whiskey folk, the whiskey guy or the whiskey lassie, whatever it may be. It's nice to kind of have a wee list to go, well, here's really good ones that you can try. And Gene Kelly saying the biggest no-brainer on the shelf. Okay, more consensus, Gene. Jerry Miller is saying Craigellachie on my Permashelf. 2 for 5 so far. Graham Fraser saying, good evening, Roy, and Barfly and friends. Good to have you in, Graham. How you keep, my friend? Just back from Speyside, I would imagine. Justin Mann is saying, imagine if the flora and fauna was brought out fully natural, how many Speysiders would suddenly be up for contention? Justin, it would be an amazing day if we saw flora and fauna coming out fully natural, right? Overland Rams Chuck is saying, good choice, Aquaviti. The Craig 13 is unique and solid. And Ben is saying, Aberdeen Whisky Shop currently have one 16-year-old Dougie Lane Craigellachie reduced from 109 to 65 at the moment. Bargain buy. Wow. 65 quid for 16-year-old Dougie Lane Craigellachie. Maybe bourbon cask. Dorpass Whiskey saying the Craigellachie is so good with savoury notes that most others do not have. That's right. Sometimes in the right mood, in the right moment, you just get a wee whiff of a kind of savoury, almost like in America they call it bouillon, right? But here we'd call it like a stock, a meat stock almost. You can occasionally pick up. Alpin is saying, if it weren't for Bunnahabhain 12, I would suspect you had copied my list so far. Okay, so you've got Bunna on the list. So we know we're not going to get perfect score. Excess to Scotch is saying, yes, Craigellachie 13, drinking it now. Excellent choice. Fantastic. More consensus. Single refill hoggy for the Dougie Lane Craigellachie whiskey with Molly. That's a good wee bargain to point out. 65 quid. Wow. Frank TG, saying Craigellachie 13 is definitely a Permashelf for me. The local military-based shop has it continually for $38. Frank, another reason to make it an easy Permashelf. My goodness. The Permashelf is absolutely brilliant, says Ginger James John. Everybody has a different palate, but just look at the chat this vPub has created. Fantastic. And I think if we can take that into the comments afterwards, maybe you haven't shared your 10 or your 5 or your 6 or whatever it may be, put it in the comments underneath this video so that people coming along afterwards can have the consensus reinforced, or they can have extra additional suggestions depending on the availability that they have near to them. Cheers, John. Cheers, Frank. Deanston 12. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left to share. We're halfway through already. 1 hour, 12 minutes in. I'll attempt to speed up a wee bit, but we don't want to rush anything. How many heads to heads have I got? I'm probably going to need to grab more glasses because I've worked out that there's 2 other head-to-heads. It's going to be a fight tonight for the Guardian of Islay, and it could have been a 3-way fight. I could have had Port Charlotte's 10-year-old in here as well. The most recent bottle of PC10, Port Charlotte 10 that I have is singing. It's glorious. I'm right behind Bruichladdich right now. I'm excited about them. It seems to be that they've come out of this volatility that existed right up until even a few years ago, that the batch variations. Sometimes I felt that they could just rely a little bit too much on a kind of winey element that I wasn't always enjoying. That's been attenuated a little bit. Sometimes some of the batches came out very spirit forward, especially in the Classic Laddie. I felt like Classic Laddie was relying on stocks that were a wee bit too young. This is a personal opinion, and I am going back some years also. But recently, Bruichladdich has been just bang solid, just fantastic stuff. The people in charge of Bruichladdich right now are doing great things. But the Guardian of Islay fight will not include the Port Charlotte 10 tonight. The Guardian of Islay is going to include my Guardian of Islay that's been around for the last few years, Ardbeg's 10-year-old. Fully natural. It tells us it's non-chill filtered on the front label. It doesn't mention anything about colour or that, but we're all absolutely convinced there's no colouring in this, and especially when you see how pale it is in the glass. Let's get 2 clean glasses over. We'll pour a wee bit of this Ardbeg 10. I only want a teaspoon. It doesn't take much to do a wee kind of head-to-head on this. And it's going to be brutal. It's going to be very brutal because I'm putting it up against a whiskey that was a previous whiskey of the year for me. It's brand new on the scene, and I think everyone's blown away by just how good the quality from this distillery is, despite the fact that it's only going to be 7 years old this year. And that is Ardnahoe's Infinite Loch. Slightly higher ABV on this one. They're up at 50% ABV, which is matching Bruichladdich favoured bottling strength for their official flagship releases. Again, non-chill filtered natural colour. It says so on the label. It's brilliant to see all of that written here. And what we have in here with Infinite Loch is probably their most bourbon leaning, but there's still some sherry cask maturation in here just to kind of round things out a little bit. Large outturn, available everywhere. roughly the exact same price as Ardbeg's 10, although we do see Ardbeg 10, wow, big blast of peat smoke just coming out that bottle there as I uncorked that. Really, really smoky. I poured a wee bit too much of that there. Look, greedy shoes. Yeah, sorry, I've forgotten what I was even saying about that there, Ardnahoe. But the quality that's coming at the age that it is quite amazing. However, I'm not sure I've done this before. Actually, I'm going to take that back. It wasn't that long ago. In fact, it must have been on the lead up to before I nominated the Ardnahoe's Infinite Loch as my whiskey of the year. It must have been in 2020, end of 2024, I think. I put the Infinite Loch up against the Port Charlotte 10, the Ardbeg 10, a Lagavulin 8, and various other similar things, Ledaig 10, for example. And that's when I realised just how good a whiskey it was for its age. Let's go to the Ardnahoe first, the younger one. Wow, smoke and a wee bit of cold coffee on the nose there. Wasn't expecting that at all. Just the first thing that hits you, you just kind of, rather than looking when you're nosing, rather than looking for anything, you just kind of try and go in and see if anything pops out. Sometimes you get nothing, but I got a nice kind of cold coffee note. Wow. The first thing that hits you about Ardnahoe that always hits me is just how smoky this whiskey is. It really, they went for a classic Islay style, but what they ended up with was really quite a robust Southern Islay style, in my opinion. Lots of peat smoke. Unforgiving. Really quite bold. But anyone nosing this, they're not going to turn around and say, we think the average age of this whiskey is about 5 years old, which we believe the Infinite Loch to be. No way. Everyone's going to be pitching it much higher than that, I think. Some sweet notes in here, some nice sweet fruits, a little bit of nice sweets, confectionery too. The sweet fruits are sweet citrus. There is a kind of like, I'm not going to say outdoors for this one. This one's almost more like a slightly warmer, more earthy tones, almost like sitting inside next to a fireplace inside. Anyway, let's have a wee sip. Delicious whiskey. Delicious whiskey. Objectively good whiskey. Just at the end there, it does give you a little chink of, a little glimpse of youthfulness. Just on the finish, you've got that kind of slightly short. It's a little bit salty tonight as well. Lovely. Slightly short, going slightly kind of malty, new makey, saccharine sweet cereal kind of finish. Another wee sip. Chewy, full. The 50% ABV really helps the boldness, the robustness of the spirit, but it hides that ABV very, very well. It's not rough, it's not jagged. It doesn't catch at all. Wonderfully well-made whiskey. Well-made whiskey, well put together whiskey. Let's have a wee nose of our Ardbeg. Okay, this is a weird thing to say, but I'm going to say that there's an elegance here, a lightness, a slightly thinner, more I don't know if pure would be the right word. Just lemon fresh, bright, thin. And the smoke here is cool, blue, outdoor, fireside smoke with dry grass, that type of smoke. Yeah, there's a wee kind of nose of almost like a freshly opened cigarette packet. Lots of lemon, goes slightly sweet, white chocolate even maybe. Sweet lemon, limoncello, lemon bonbons. Okay, a little sip. I think the only thing that can beat this right now, on another night in a different moment, the Infinite Loch could win. But I think tonight it has to clearly go to the Ardbeg. There's just, and it's maturity. I'm sure it's maturity. I think this bottle is a particularly good bottling, a particularly good vatting. It's been consistent over a few Ardbeg 10s for me. They're really good. They're just really good. They're really good at being Ardbeg 10 as well. They're really good at being quite different. That's really quite charming. These are the flavours that help us fall in love with Islay whiskey. Yeah, there's an elegance to this that I think comes from a wee bit more maturity, just a little bit more crafted, a little bit more confident. That just what comes from being 10 years old as opposed to 5 or 6 years old on the Infinite Loch. I think the only thing that can beat this right now would be maybe a nice night with a good version of a Port Charlotte 10. Maybe, certainly it's Cask Strength sibling, the 10-year-old Ardbeg Cask Strength, but that's a wee bit more expensive and harder to get a hold of. Both excellent whiskies, but if I'm to be objective about this, despite how much I adore everything that's coming out of Ardnahoe, it's a buy on site for me now. I'm curious to all the new releases that come out from Ardnahoe. I think everything that comes out from them is exceptionally high quality whiskey. I think what they've managed to do here is put out a fantastic core range product at an available, affordable price. But while it's within 1, 2, 4 or 5 pounds of the Ardbeg 10, I think I would be falling towards bias for a brand rather than objectively being able to taste more poise in the Ardbeg. So on that wee head-to-head, the Ardbeg makes it, and that means that I don't know if it's managed to stay. Has it always been there? I don't think it was there last year. It dropped off. I think I had a Kilkerran in last year or something. Something else, PT pushed it out the way. I think it might have been Ardnahoe Infinite Loch that pushed it out the way last year, but there we go. It's made it back in again, and I think that's only fair. Maybe that's what's going to happen in the future, that they'll swap around. Clearly last year I was just in love with the Infinite Loch. Would have been my whiskey of the year then as well. It would have been an easy thing to put forward. Donnerpass Whiskey saying is Indy Kalila from Refill Bourbon. 8 to 12 years at Cask Strength has that lemon thing usually for me. Absolutely, I get it too. So nice that they are available and reasonably priced most of the time. Jalpin is saying Port Charlotte won over the Ardbeg for me. I think it's going to be the same for a lot of people as well. And also, you're getting the best of both worlds with the Port Charlotte 10 is because you're getting that 50% ABV, the same as the Ardnahoe. But you're getting the 10-year age statement on it as well, the same as the Ardbeg. The only reason that I didn't put it in a three-way fight tonight is that it's pouring too many drams, perhaps. But I also knew that there was likely to be another Bruichladdich in the running this year. P-Dram is part-time drummer. P-Dram part-time drummer, I think that's the name. Is celebrating being a member of the Bar 5 for 72 months. Ardbeg 10 is probably my top pick of all. So there we go. A little bit more consensus as well. Good to hear. And Tim is saying Port Charlotte 10 and Ledaig 10 are my go-to for Pete. You're not going very far wrong there, are you, Tim? Not wrong at all. So I've now used 7 glasses tonight. I'm going to reach over and get another 2. Listen, I don't need to finish these drams. I'm doing it purely for a wee head-to-head and things and to make decisions. But while I'm enjoying the whiskey and pouring tiny wee pours, it's a pleasure to dirty up some glasses for. Let me reach over and grab a couple of clean ones. Apologies, I should have been prepared, but it's within reach. I've got 2 wee tulip-shaped glasses. I need to make a bit of space now before I start knocking things over. Try and remember what's what. And we'll move along the list a wee bit. We've talked about Highlanders, we've talked about bourbon cask, we've just talked about peaty whiskies. So we want to kind of have as much of a spread as possible when we're recommending things. And certainly if we imagine our Permashelf being a bit of a mood shelf for us too, then it makes sense that we're going to have something a bit sherried in there, right? Something a bit rich and decadent, something that's going to kind of bring some winter dried fruit warmth. Maybe some chocolate and red berries, that type of, all those lovely things that we can get from a nice sherry cask. And over the years, I've always kind of had something to represent that. But it's certainly when we started out, it was pretty difficult to find something that was sherry cask, you know, something that was really, really a good, affordable, easy, available example of a very sherry forward whiskey. They were out there, but they were expensive. You might remember the first 2022 list. I filled the slot with Glendronach's 12-year-old. And that was down to the availability we had at that time. Things have changed a hell of a lot. And over the years, I've discovered things like this amazing, amazing, amazing Speyburn 15 that is now discontinued. Speyburn has chosen to go over to the dark side. They've chosen to go, they stack them high and sell them cheap. 40% route for their whiskies. Everything is down at 40% and chill filtered now, where they used to have this wonderful, bold, confident statement of non-chill filtered, natural colour, and they wrote a wee message on the front label to tell us that was the case. Age statement and 46% ABV. Great value, but more important than all of that, a delicious, delicious whiskey as well. And eventually this became one of my picks as a sherry cask whiskey. Well, Thompson Brothers TBBSW came along, and for the price they were asking for it, £34, £38, price of somewhere around that order, you know, it didn't taste like a 6-year-old whiskey. It didn't taste like a blended Scotch whiskey. It was just delicious. It was easy drinking, delicious, good value, easy to recommend, but not available everywhere. So I did get a wee bit of a blowback on that. Well, I've got a cure for that. I've got a cure for the discontinuation. I've got a cure for things disappearing. And I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it to the test tonight. In this slightly shorter glass, I'm going to pour in a wee teaspoon of the Speyburn 15. One of my favourite core range releases over recent years. It's heartbreaking that it's disappeared. And I'm going to pour in some of this, £45, 46%, fully natural, sherry cask matured, single malt Scotch whiskey from the Highlands, my whiskey of the year for 2026 as well, Edradour 10. I'm already on my second bottle of this, and I didn't drink all of the first bottle. It was one of those ones that it got down to a certain point, and I gifted it to a friend I was enjoying sharing it with, and he took it home. I hope he's enjoying it as much as I am. I think it's just fantastic to have this today. They originally brought this out to celebrate 200 years of Edradour in 2025, but this is going to be the presentation of Edradour 10 going forward. 45 quid from sherry casks, from a tiny wee Highland distillery. If they can do it, everybody can. What's the problem? Now, I'm comparing a 15-year-old, whoops, sherry, I'm throwing it on the desk as well, and I'm comparing it to a 10-year-old. This actually takes me to Edradour. We nose of the Speyburn. Quite remarkably different nose profiles here. It's actually crazy that I'm comparing these two things because they are not alike. The only thing that draws these two into the same category on the Permashelf tonight is trying to find something to put in that sherry matured, sherry profile slot. The Speyburn is not a soft whiskey, but it's much softer tonight. Slightly sweeter, slightly more rounded. And dare I say, a little bit more mature on the nose. Whereas this is all kind of, it's quite robust and brave. It's confident, it's loud, lots of bass notes, lots of deep, dark fruits, lots of kind of mulch and farm, a little bit of funk, a little bit of silage even. Super, super nose, super nose. Let's go back to our Speyburn and we'll have a nose and sip. I think we know this isn't a head-to-head to see what goes through. We know that the Speyburn can't go through. The decision by Inverhouse to treat Speyburn the way they're treating it today is heartbreaking. They're not going to be on the Permashelf. This is to see what we are missing and to work out just how much the Edradour can replace it. Still a lovely whiskey, still a lovely whiskey. I'm going to miss you, Speyburn 15. I've got a backup bottle. It's through there, locked away. I hope I can keep it for a while. It's, I think it's a cracking whiskey. If you can still pick up Speyburn 15 and you're getting it at fairly priced retail, what you're going to get is a lovely, not soft, I would even go as far to say robust, but maybe not as robust as this Edradour tonight, quite a confident, strong whiskey in the Speyburn 15. But you're going to get a really quite balanced sherry experience from it. There's lots of sherry notes in here, but it's not reliant on that. It's just part of the ensemble. There's lots of other things to keep you distracted and keep you sipping and enjoying. If you see a more modern Speyburn and you see it at 40% ABV, in my experience, you can probably just kind of walk on by, right? Objectively good whiskey. It's going to be a shame. It's going to be a shame to have to replace it. Much the same way we're forced to replace the TBBSW for very different reasons. It's just going to run out. There's not going to be any more of it left. Here we go into the Edradour. Okay, some nice sharp fruit coming through now. Not citrus. Let's go with kind of green apples and more orchard. But it's got that real kind of farm-like quality about it. This is quite a unique thing. Cheers. Oh, easy. So I'm a bit nervous that this wee Edradour 10 is going to lose out because of losing 5 years of age on that Speyburn. Like I say, it's not fair to compare these things. They're very different things. And I think that there is objectively more youth in the Edradour 10. Of course there is. But it doesn't lose out on engagement. It doesn't lose out when it hits your palate. There's nice definition there, where the 15-year-old Speyburn is much more round and much more a linear kind of engagement thing through the development and onto the finish. There's much more edge to the Edradour. Like I say, a little bit more bravado, more confidence. It just kind of jumps out the glass a wee bit more. Good grief. If anybody has not picked up this, burned 45 of their sterlings on a wee bottle of Edradour 10, what are you hanging about for? We have a single malt Highland Scotch whiskey from sherry casks from one of Scotland's smallest distilleries for 45 quid. The bargain that it is not in question. Quite amazing. Ha, that's my dram tonight. Also on the list, says Yalpin, we're doing well tonight. We can be friends. Glennis Medicine, Edradour 10 cask strength. Or Glenfarclas 105, surely. Edradour 10 cask strength, another good option. You know, there's Edradours that come out on the part of a signatory through the Unchill Filtered series as well. Much more batch variation there. I think what they're going for here is a much more consistent core range product. Makes it a wee bit easier to recommend. Dornpass Whiskey saying, I have 5 Speyburn 15s put away. Incredible whiskey for the price of a reasonable 12. I'm glad you were able to hoard, because I don't know if it's ever coming back again. Harrow is saying, very different style. It is a different style, Harrow, absolutely. Graham Fraser is saying, so what's a perma price for a Permashelf whiskey currently, Roy? Well, I'm going to go into pricing. I'm going to summarise it at the end tonight, and I'm going to tell everyone what I paid for my Permashelf bottles back in 2022 for the original Permashelf list, because I recorded that. And then I'm going to take that forward and say, what would the prices be if we factored in inflation and things like that, and see where we are at today. So we'll talk about prices, Graham. Tamastalos. It's not just the sherry, the spirit itself is so umami for Edradour. I can't get enough of it. It's umami's a great note to talk about this. For me, it was the kind of farmy, funky, verging on a mulchy, grassy funk. It's almost like wet grass or wet leaves or something like that. Delicious whiskey is. A dram came in from a friend, Warner. My perma based on availability are Bunnahabhain 12, Arran 10, Kilkerran 12, Deanston 12, Glencadam 12, Craigellachie 13, Bruichladdich, Classic Laddie, any Ardnahoe, Springbank 10, and Glenmorangie 12. Very interesting, Warner. Very interesting indeed. Thank you very much for the drama, friend. I think we can both enjoy a wee bit of consensus there. I'm going to try and do a count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're at 50%. We've got 5 out of 10 is your number tonight when it comes to consensus. Oops, we jump again. Scott Thorne is saying Edradour 10 is such a dark, complex dram. Muddy, dirty, dense, yet beautiful. It's kind of funny how we're getting we might use different words and different descriptors to articulate what we're tasting, absolutely, but we're in the same ballpark. Honestly, can't believe Edradour actually fixed their presentation of their 10-year-old. That's so good. I love the old 40% ABV 10-year-old, so the fact that they're finally upping it to 46 is amazing, says Glennis Maid. Listen, you need to try it if you haven't already. Daisy is saying, evening, Roy and Aquavitae Barflies. I've been buying mostly independent, so no Permashelf here, but agree with the ones mentioned already. And you've been through them, Daisy, already now, that you have maybe that mental kind of list in order to be able to recommend to people that are coming in. Adrian, he's here. Good to see Adrian. He's saying, I loved Andrew Symington's reason for not moving to 46% sooner. He'd pre-bought loads of tubes and needed to use before moving. He was actually annoyed. He didn't buy all the tubes. He was annoyed at the person who did buy all the tubes in order to save just a few pennies on the tubes. And that's one of the reasons that it took so long for us to get fully natural Edradour. Okay, good stuff. It's very easy to move Edradour onto the Permashelf. So now we have how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bottles there. We've got 3 to go. And these 3, I'm going to leave these 2 till the end. And it's going to be one that's new and one that appears in 2026 after disappearing in a previous list. And it's difficult for me to justify it, but I've fixed it and it's back again. I'm not going to sip any more whiskies. I'm not going to pour anymore. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've still got 6 drams in front of me tonight. I've got plenty to be getting on with to enjoy a wee quiz at the end with you all. But before we get there, before we summarise all of this and talk about prices and things like that, I'm going to share with you the last 3 on the list. As well as covering the flavour profiles such as bourbon cask, sherry cask, smoky flavour profiles, all of those types of things, I think it's nice to at least attempt to try and cover the regions. But I also think it's nice to put something in there that's cask strength. You know, there is truth that you have to be careful when you're bringing especially new people into whiskey, that you don't want to pour them something that is just so hot. For them, it's utterly, utterly off-putting. I get it. However, in my experience, if that cask strength, higher ABV, slightly more potent whiskey also brings a ton of flavour with the higher ABV, it's amazing how you can sometimes win people over. So if you're enjoying a 43%, a 46% with them, a 48, maybe a 50, and they're quite happy going along with it as well, why not try them with a small pour of something cask strength? And if you're going to pour them a cask strength whiskey, something that they might fall in love with, and they're going to go out and buy themselves, I can't think of many that's easier to recommend than this Speyside from Benromach. I've got a couple of these cask strengths now. They're all vintage based and batch based. This one that I'm holding up just now, I don't know if this one's been on the vPub before, but at least one of them has. This is a vintage 2012 batch 3. I'm trying to hold that in focus there. Camera's doing, there we go, that's a bit better. This one is 59.6% ABV. It's distilled in 2012 and bottled in 2022. It tells us that on there. Very, very transparent label on the cask strength. Benromach generally is very transparent these days. Of course, we wish the core range was up at 46. It might be a core range that's being the Permashelf. But right now, they hold the cask strength spot. And I think that's very deserving. Now, it's, you know, the prices fluctuate quite a lot on the batches, and whether or not people are trying to shift stock or offer discounts and things, how new it is, you can sometimes, these drop into the 50s, 50 odd pounds. Standard pricing is usually about 65 to 75 for these, depending on where you buy them. The quality never drops below a very, very high minimum. Fantastic and easy to include. And how good is this branding looking now? See this branding that we felt was really quite jarring when it first came out? I think it's maybe one of the best rebranding exercises that we've seen. I think it's strong and confident and bold. I know a lot of people see kind of much more kind of socialist, Russian type typography and things here. I don't see that at all. I see it very in keeping with the look and aesthetic of the distillery itself. And there we go, bottle number 8, which leaves 2. And the first one, or bottle 9, is going to be hard for me to justify. Not justify putting on the Permashelf. I think I'm going to get a lot of consensus from you about including this one. But it dropped off. And the only thing I can offer you as to why it would have dropped off is just because of pure competition. The fact that there's just so many good whiskies to choose from, that despite the fact that I'm focusing on single malt Scotch whisky right now that has to be fully natural for this Permashelf, this one still managed to be omitted in previous lists. It did appear in the first list, but it's dropped off since. Scott is saying if we're doing cask strength in the Glen Scotia Victoriana, must be in the mix. A very good pick, a very good recommendation, Scott. Ian Bruce is saying, good evening, Ryan. Everyone had a nice little drama Blair Athol Flora and Fauna, kindly provided by the legend Glenn Duncan. Glad you're enjoying it, Ian, or I hope you're enjoying it. Glenn is one of the most generous out there. Great guy. Yalpin is saying my full list: Boona 12, Glencadam 10, Port Charlotte 10, Craigellachie 13, Benromach cask strength, Kilkerran 12, Springbank 10, Edradour 10, Ardnamurchan AD, and Classic Laddie. What? That's got to be the highest consensus. I think we're at 70 or 80% there. 1, 2. Yeah, I think we're at 80% of an agreement. That's amazing. It's amazing to see. Amazing to see. Here's one that's not on your list, and it wasn't on mine, but it's back again. It's nice to have Islay represented when it comes to the PT drams, but what about this humble little cracker that's always there, always amazing, always full of peat smoke, always a slightly different take on peat smoke? 46.3% ABV, Ledaig 10-year-old. Now, I know there's a slightly more inexpensive Sinclair Series Rioja finish. That's not for me. I think it's a good whiskey. I think it's an enjoyable whiskey. I think they've done a good job there. I'm always going to shy away from red wine casks and prefer much more traditional whiskey. I say traditional, you know what I mean, bourbon, sherry, that type of thing. I have to try before I buy it on red wine casks, and even when I like them, like in the case of the Rioja, it's easy for me to prefer alternatives when they're available. If you wanted to crank up things and premiumize your Permashelf a little bit, I don't think you could go much further wrong than the 18-year-old version of this, which is usually, in the UK, sitting below £100. One of the best value 18-year-olds alongside its sibling Deanston 18. Wonderful, wonderful whiskey. When I talk about Permashelf, some of the bottles I've put up here have not been on the shelf for months, perhaps, in the vPub. This one has never not been on the shelf. For as long as I've been on YouTube, absolutely, I don't think I've ever been without, that I can recall, for any amount of significant time, a bottle of Ledaig 10. It's peaty, it's smoky, it's a slightly different take on Islay, but I suspect if you're poured it in isolation, you might not be able to pick it out as not being from Islay. The quality is always fantastic. The value is always there. Accessibility, affordability, all the boxes are ticked. We love it. It's a perennial favourite of the community. It is the epitome of a Permashelf bottle, and yet it slipped off mine. And that's got everything to do with just the sheer amount of choice and variety that we have. Ledaig 10 always there, says John Ginger Genius. He agrees with me, some more consensus. That's quite interesting to read, John. Thank you. So let me tell you then, to complete the list of 10, we've had a wee whinge about how things have slipped when it comes to the Speyburn. Okay, they've gone in the wrong direction. I think it's weird. I think it's against the rub of the green right now. It's against the kind of run of the grain of. It's not what people are doing right now, but they're going for cheap, high volume, razor thin margins. That's the way that they're going to go about marketing their Speyburn portfolio, perhaps, and that's a shame because we've lost some gems there. We saw Edradour doing the opposite thing, going in the opposite direction, and I hope that it picks up a bit of zeitgeist out of that. It's already a bit of a cult distillery. I'm going to rinse out this glass. I'm not sure what's been in it. It might actually be clean. I've not used this glass. It's actually a clean glass. So I've got a clean glass. In the 10th place, that's never appeared on the Permashelf list on the vPub before, but it appears here now, is also following the same path of upgrades, such as Edradour's. Edradour went up in ABV from 40 to 46, and it decided no more chill filtration. It was never coloured. It was always natural colour. No more chill filtration. We're going to go natural, and we're going to keep the price very aggressive at £45. Excellent. In a different direction, no change to ABV whatsoever, no change to presentation, still fully natural, but where we didn't have an age statement, we now have an age statement, and while that was not a requirement, it's a very, very positive move in the right direction, and our classic Laddie, 10-year-old, now makes a bright contrast appearance on the Permashelf. There's more in this than I expected to be because I've been enjoying this. I've still got the bottle of over there, of course, of the other non-age statement classic Laddie as well. 50% ABV. That hasn't changed, but just to get classic Laddie now without any change to the price, same price, with a 10-year age statement quietly, stealthily rolling out there, replacing the non-age statement stock with the exact same aesthetic bottle I think, is a clever move and quite an obvious addition to the Permashelf. Now, I also think we've got a unique nose here on Bruichladdich as well. Really, it's malt driven, it's grain driven, it's cereal driven. There's a purity to the nose here. There's wafts, big bags of orchard fruit, cooked apple, green apples, sweet apples, all the apples. We've got a lovely crispness to things. There is still a tiny, tiny hint, but it's in no way off-putting at all, of a slightly lactic edge, much in the same way you might find in a good bourbon cask Bladnoch, a nice crisp daft mill. But almost nothing. There's just a lovely balance and elegance and a purity to this nose. Let's have a sip. Cheers, everyone. And that texture, not gloopy, slightly oily though. Bags and bags of cereal, creamy cereal, sharp orchard fruits, apple pear. Just there's just a clean, honest purity to this. I just imagine we started out tonight looking at that Glencadam, very similar, but imagine that Glencadam with a creamy, thick aspect to it, more complexity. Just gorgeous whiskey. Just gorgeous whiskey. Sub £50. I actually saw this, the non-age statement version Classic Laddie, in a supermarket recently at £38. I felt that was too cheap. I think that the Bruichladdich, maybe they've got a model going where they can make money through supermarkets. But I think when they're putting out 50% fully natural, gorgeous, specialist, small batch, single malt whiskey of this quality, this is for the specialist market. It's perfect. And it also complements our lineup beautifully as well, because there's really nothing else like it in the lineup. Tim is saying Ledaig 16 at 50%. The bourbon cask they put in sherry for 2 years to make the 18 is my perfect dream. Ledaig would be happy to pay the same price as the 18, so just keep it out the sherry, you're saying. I hear you, Tim. Brian Storm is saying, I did not know the Classic Laddie was a 10, and I must admit I hadn't enjoyed it for a while. Ordered a bottle, so looking forward to it arriving. Brian, please let us know what you think about it. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. That Ledaig, Ian Bruce is saying 10 at times in the local bottle shop for Australian $100 or less on special clearance. So it's about £60, I think, Ian, isn't it? It's a wee bit pricier, but you do have to pay a wee bit more down there. I understand that. Everyone does in the States. He's saying I really have to shout out Compass Box Orchard House is an easy sipper. Scotch Noob, gentle but fun introduction. A reasonably priced in my humble opinion. You might remember, Chris, that my first ever Permashelf had the Orchard House on it. Oh, this orange is flooding in now. Scott Thor is saying got it on Amazon last week for £34. Don't like buying from there, but what can you do? Listen, if they make it easy and if it's cheap and money's tight, isn't it? You don't need to feel shame. You don't need to justify it to anyone, Scott. £34. What a bargain. And if it's the 10-year-old, wow. John is saying 8 out of 10. Didn't expect Edradour and for some reason can't connect with Craigellachie. It's a pass. What a consensus number though. 8 out of 10 of our bottles agree, John. Amazing. Annabelle is saying that it's vPubs like tonight that remind me where our palates differ and where they match, which reinforced for me that I'm not here for the influencer hype and I enjoy all the Bruichladdich. So I would say that that comment just sums up so much. It's so much, so much. I don't make any money out of selling whiskey. It's just not what I do. I would just want you guys to be enjoying good whiskey. And when I find things that's good whiskey and it's easy for me to recommend, it's easy for me to talk about, and it's easy for me to create content. That's how it works. Annabelle, it's nice to have you here. Kyle Taylor is saying, had to step out to get a great friend, to greet a friend. Did Aquavite come round to Laddie 10? I did, Kyle. It's in the glass, buddy. Everyone is saying I really have to shout out Compass Box. I picked that one up, didn't I? Or have you commented twice, Chris? Thanks. Tim is saying, I see the NAS Classic Laddie's on sale here in the US. I hope that's to clear the stock for the 10 to come in. I didn't find too much of a difference between the two. There was a wee bit of an edge, a wee bit of an upgrade, a lift to this, but we're talking minor degrees. If you're getting a good deal on the Classic Laddie non-age statement, I would be tempted to pick it up, Tim. George P is saying 8 out of 10 matched with mine. Boona 12 and Port Charlotte 10 missing. On mine, replace your AD and Benromach. Fantastic. 80% consensus. Good to have you, George. Dan is saying Bruichladdich Classic Laddie, often €37 in Europe, so that's closer to 30 to 31 pounds. That's after transport and import. And of course, Bruichladdich is not losing money. Well, we hope they are not losing money on that. Remember just how much of it is, of course, taxation and duties and that type of thing. Superb, superb. That's our 10 bottles. The only other one that is an honourable mention, and I should, because I'm going to get asked it in the comments, I'm going to get messages. Why no Arran 10? Why is there still no Arran 10? There are nicer Arrans that I would put on the list before Arran 10. I find Arran 10 to be a fantastic, wonderful, easy to recommend, fully natural, perfect Permashelf pick. And yet, I find it just a nudge too sweet for me. I can find myself pouring an Arran 10 and enjoying it thoroughly, but not really being compelled to go back for another. I find it just a little bit too, maybe it's first fill bourbon heavy. I don't know what it is, just a little bit too sweet. Personal preference. So it's a wee bit like the Boona Havin 12 for me. It's great, it's easy to recommend, but it doesn't make my own personal Permashelf. Let's share with you some summaries. As Sean says, Sainsbury's in England have now started stocking Ledaig 10, Arran 10, Classic Laddie 10 and Tamdhu 12. Oh, very welcomed move. Sean, I hope that means that you're getting it at a good price as well. I'm going to share with you the prices here, because if we go back to when I first shared the Permashelf with you way back in 2022, so we're back a clear 4 years ago now. For the 10 bottles I shared with you back then, and remember I was including a blended malt and a blend in there, very different selection, would have cost £442 for 10 bottles, £44.20 per bottle average price. If we fast forward to 2024 and we go to the Bank of England's inflation calculator and imagine how much £442 should be in 2024, of course, this is a time of fairly high inflation. We can see that we would expect to be paying for our 10 bottles of the Permashelf, £486. But what happened, despite the fact that I feel like I went up in quality for 2024's list, we actually managed to beat the price, and it was almost identical despite inflation. It was quite a surprise when we looked at pricing back then, and we managed to get it for just £10 more than what we paid in 2022. Then in 2025, obviously we went fully natural, we went fully single malt Scotch whisky last year, but with inflation, our target price would be somewhere in the order of about £492. But we really did upgrade. We put in a cask strength in the list. Everything went fully natural, and we ended up paying quite a bit more, £536 for our 10 bottles. So what do we take away from that? If we want to insist on single malt whiskies, if we want to insist on good quality, high quality, fully natural whiskies with no colouring, no chill filtration, all of the good stuff, looks like it's going to come with a premium. £536. Where are we today in 2026? Well, inflation continues to just keep rolling on and on and on. And we should be looking at somewhere around £511 as being our kind of target today. Well, I can tell you, I've gone through the list, and yeah, it depends on the retailer you go to. I haven't been using heavily discounted prices. I've been using kind of median retail prices. If you wanted to buy the 10 whiskies over my shoulder here, Kilkerran 12, Springbank 10, Glencadam 10, Ardnamurchan AD, Craigellachie 13, Ardbeg's 10-year-old Edradour 10, Benromach Cask Strength, and Bruichladdich 10, you would be paying £514. It's actually cheaper than it was last year and bang on point for inflation over those same years. What does that mean? That means, again, it's one of these kind of examples of whiskies kind of coming back to us. Because of the choice and the selection that we have, we're being a bit more picky. We know where to go, and we're not willing to just blindly, loyally follow the brands that we love when the prices are going up and up and up. No, we're quite happy to switch it a little bit. If the Ardbeg 10 goes up too high in price, we'll pick up the Port Charlotte 10. If the Port Charlotte 10 is too high, we'll maybe go to Infinite Lock or something else. There's so much choice, and it's continually changing in that direction. More and more and more choice coming along all the time. If we go back to 2022, there's probably a dozen new distilleries since then that have appeared, adding to that. There's probably 24 more independent bottlers that have come along, adding more and more choice into the mix. The prices have softened. All that heavily overinflated cask prices that were driving all the prices up right across the board, that's all changed. That's all gone. So it's not a surprise that not only has our prices flattened out, but they've actually come down a bit, despite the fact that the age statements, the ABV, the quality has gone up over the years of the Permashelf lists, in my opinion. That's what's happening. Greg is saying, weird word, and it's a tip for you guys, Aquavitae. And where our French fantastic Armoric 15-year-old is sold €20 less in Germany than here in France. Yeah, I know. The Netherlands are the same. Great bargains on whiskey. Listen, that Armoric 15 is a delicious pour as well, Greg. Tim is saying a signatory 100 Imperial proof bottle would be a good addition to that. Can change distilleries on the shelf. I like the way you think, Tim. It's a perfect idea. £50 or less. 57.1% ABV. Lots of selection. Lots of different cask makeup too. Black Fenner said only one match, but 4 of mine weren't Scotch. Would have been 2 if you'd picked a different Edradour. Could have been 3 if Springbank 10 was easier to source. Some great recommendations though, Aquavitae. Thank you, buddy. We still managed to get a wee bit of overlap. We'll take it, right? And Jalpin is saying total price for mine here in Germany is €450, plus the Springbank, where the price varies widely. So you can imagine you'd maybe have up to maybe, I don't know, 70, 80, 90, €100 for the Springbank. But again, even with that in price, you get better taxation, better pricing on your whiskey generally in Germany, but our prices are not far apart. Let's have a wee look at just kind of how the mix split. This is kind of interesting to me. Highlands are higher than I expected them to be. We've got 4 from the Highlands, 2 from Campbelltowns, 2 from Speyside, 2 from Islay, but none from the Lowlands yet. I say yet. Think about what's happening in the Lowlands. We've got all these wonderful whiskies coming in from the likes of Glasgow Distillery, Kingsbarns. We've got Lochlee. We've got Daftmill when we can get a hold of it, and we're willing to kind of push the boat out a little bit for something that's really quite rare and precious. Maybe in the future, we're going to see the Permashelf being forced to be reconsidered again and again and again as these lowland distilleries gain a bit of maturity and variety and establish themselves a bit more. So the idea of a permanent shelf is only permanent in concept. It's only permanent while our mood follows that bottle, while that bottle remains of high quality, available at a good price. And as soon as it doesn't, or it changes, or as soon as the competition comes along to force it to be changed, it stays there. Maybe in 2027, I'll be in the mood to bring another Permashelf list. And it makes a mockery of the idea of a permanent shelf, when theoretically every year I'm going to be changing it. But I think it's become a really nice tool to make recommendations to people, regardless of where they are on their whisky journey. But I think it's also a nice mechanism to follow the ebb and flow and the natural changes that we see in whisky and the variety and choice that we have available to us year after year. And if I don't do it in 2027, probably I'll bring it back in 2028. It depends on how much change we've seen over the next year. Anyway, that's us for the Permashelf for 2026. Cheers. How are we doing for time? 2:06, not too bad tonight. Maybe get away with a 2.5 hour vPub tonight. That'll be a nice, neat session. But we do have a quiz at the end. It's quite a crunchy quiz at the end. I think it's an interesting one. See how you feel about it. I hope that you'll stay. I hope you'll play along, and hope that you'll realise it's all a bit of fun and you're only ever playing against yourself. Jimmy Legg is saying, well, Roy, our noses and palates may not always align, but it sure is great to know that there's a big hug waiting for us when we get to Glasgow in the fall. We can't wait to see everyone there again. Jimmy, there's a lot of people looking forward to seeing you again as well. I'm actually a wee bit nervous. It's going to be interesting to see how you react to the maniacal nature of the Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend. It is a bit of a whirlwind, a maelstrom of people and hugs and happiness and great, great, great whisky and laughs. We're looking forward to welcoming you again. Kyle is saying the first two choices would run me $250 at my local, and I'd have to be lucky. I know that's because you're in the States, Kyle. Maybe you should come visit us in Glasgow and maybe try and pick up a couple of Campbelltown gems to take home. Henrik is saying, can you publish your Permashelf list after the video? I'll tell you what I will do. I'll do bookmarks so that it'll be published in the comments underneath, and anybody can just click along to it. So it's not only published, Henrik, you'll be able to click right to the moment that I'm talking about it. Jalpin is saying, I usually get the Springbank €45-ish when I visit Andorra. Oh, wow. There's a wee tip for anybody in the tiny little Andorra territory in the west of Europe. €45, bargain. Everyone is saying, Agavidi, because all the great whisky in my Permashelf just keeps growing, much to Scotland's happiness and my purchasing power. Listen, we've always got to be mindful of cost, overindulgence, and things like that. Remember, this is a hobby. It's a kind of first world thing. All the complaints that we have and things are really quite first world type problems. But as I say, we're here on a Thursday night to escape and indulge things. And talking about price and availability and how much is affordable and how much is reasonable is all part of the discussion. The one glassman is saying, if you gave me 12 slots, I would include Ardbeg 10 and Ledaig 10. Warner, they are in my 10, but they may just be slightly outside yours, buddy. Ginger Genius is saying, great vPub, Roy. Loved everybody's take on your selection. Keep it coming in the comments underneath the video as well after the event, please do. Pedro, celebrating being a member of 36 months, all the way from Brazil. He's saying, late, but here I am, evening barflies. Nice to have you, Pedro. George is saying, really enjoyed the vPub. Think amount of interaction and variety coming in from the barflies goes to show it's well appreciated. Absolutely, George. You are appreciated too. It's nice to have you here, buddy. Okay. There we have our Permashelf for 2026. I genuinely had a bit of fun putting this one together, and I was genuinely pleased to see, well, there's nice to see new entries and things like that in there and things going in the right direction. It was nice to have the reliable stalwarts, and like 4 or maybe 4 of these have been here since the very beginning. The very first ever Permashelf list that I put together in 2022, there's still 4 here tonight. So it's not always about change and new and getting better and moving and switching. Sometimes it's nice just to have the reassurance of continued dedication to good quality. And I think those ones need to be celebrated, right? Anyway, please please, I know we're going to see it dive. We're going to see it fall under 300, and it's going to tumble all the way down to about 200 of you, because I know a lot of you aren't really interested in the quiz or whatever. But sometimes it's a wee bit of fun. You don't need to be vocal. You can just keep your scores to yourself. But before we do that, throw in your numbers out of 10, not what you predict about what you're going to have in the quiz tonight. How much of an overlap did we have? Did we have any? I mean, helping, we managed to get 8 out of 10 of an overlap, which is really quite considerable. I was predicting 3s or 4s, or maybe if we're lucky, a 5 out of 10 is an overlap. Kyle Taylor has got a 3 out of 10 as an example. Then throughout tonight, if we're playing along in the quiz and you want to share how you're scoring and things like that, you can do, but you can also keep it to yourself and just play against yourself. You can lean on the folk and the knowledgeable whiskey folk in the lounge. And remember that it's always for fun. It's meant to pique curiosity, and it's always multiple choice. Look out for the banana skins, the tricky questions, and the really deliberately obtuse questions, the asshats. Helping us say 8 out of 10 bottles, surely a higher score than the quiz. That should be the target. Let that be your target tonight. Ginger Genius John is saying 8 out of 10, no bad. Absolutely, John. And everyone is saying, so Aquavita, you're saying the Permashelf is semi-permanent. That's exactly what I'm saying, Chris. That's what I opened with tonight. There's nothing permanent about the shelf other than the fact it's a concept. Brian Stormont is saying 5 out of 10 for me, and the other 5 cannot disagree with, completely subjective. Absolutely, Brian, that's the thing, and I think it's one of the good things about whiskey. We love accommodating each other's differing opinions. Okay, everyone, good luck with the quiz at the end. I've enjoyed going through the Permashelf with you again this week. I hope you guys enjoy the quiz. 7th of May already. That's quite incredible. Wow. 7th of May, 2026. How time is flying. Good luck, everyone. Question 1. Which of these distilleries closed in the 1990s? Looking at closed distilleries here, I'm going to give you a list of 3 closed distilleries. I need you to tell me which one closed in the 1990s. A, Imperial in Speyside. B, Melbourne in the Highlands. Or C, Rosebank in the Lowlands. Rick Johnson, undefeated so far. Question 1. Take it. Four out of 10 overlap for Fred, now from Alabama. That's a decent overlap. Rick Johnson also with 4, but Julian Rickman, him and I had 5 of an overlap. Big Jimmy Jazz had 5 plus Kilkerran 8, and Hebridean Moon close. Okay, Hebridean Moon is the lead chick cast strength. Derek McGrainer, 1 out of 10. Probably got some Irish whiskies in there, Derek, right? Mark Slinger is on a 5 out of 10, a big overlap. And Franz G on a 3 out of 10. Super interesting to see some consensus there. If you've got lists that you'd like to share, rather than in the live chat tonight, it'd be nice for you to put them in the comments under the video. It's got so much more value for people coming along after the fact. Which of these distilleries closed in the 1990s? Daisy's saying closed versus mothballed. Oh, I see where you're leaning there. Let's go with yes. Yes to both. It doesn't really matter, Daisy. I can tell you that there is a banana skin here tonight. Sometimes in question 1, all 3 options are correct so that nobody goes home with 0 out of 10. But tonight there is a banana skin. One of them did not close in the 90s, while the other 2 did. Imperial and Speyside, Rosebank and the Lowlands both closed in the 90s, but Melbourne was one of the 3 Inverness distilleries that was closed way back in 1983, alongside its 2 Glenvor and Glenalbin, weren't they? Question 2. Which of these post-war distilleries lies close to the castle of Camelot as used in Monty Python's Holy Grail? So any of you that's watched Holy Grail, you can also see this, and it appears in Game of Thrones, this place. It appears in Outlander. But I'm going to give you a list of post-war distilleries. Tell me which distillery is near the castle that was used in Monty Python's Holy Grail. Am I talking about A, Craigellachie, B, Royal Lochnagar, or C, Deanston? Run away! It's been so long since I've watched the Holy Grail. I need to watch it. Chalpin is saying, whichever distillery it is, let's not go there. It's a silly place. Anytime I've been there recently, it seems to have been in a state of construction. And Justin is spot on. He's saying, is that Doon Castle? It absolutely is. We're repressed. Help. So many Monty Python things coming out. So good. I can tell you that you're all spot on. Anyone that's answering C, you're quite right. Doon Castle, very close to Deanston Distillery. In fact, the Dean and Deanston, and Dean and Doon, the etymology of the two words is the same. Is that a European Deanston or an African Deanston? Question 3. Which of these brands features a branding element on their bottle labels that mimics the roofline of their distilleries? So we're looking for branding on a label that mimics the roofline of their distilleries. Where would you find that? Would you find that on A, Macallan, B, Glencadam, or C, Tomatin? It's actually quite tricky for such an early question. Usually the questions start off quite gentle and they get tougher towards the end. Closing out on the ass hat at the end, of course. Lots and lots of people going with the Macallan. So therefore choosing A. Romeo at CO2. Good to have you with us, Romeo. He's gone with B on this one for Glencadam. And Whiskey with Molly is saying no, it's B. Pedro is saying A, but not sure. Let me put you all out of your misery here. Don't sweat it. Don't worry about it. If you answer A for Macallan or B for Glencadam, you would be correct on both. Tomatin's in there is a wee bit of a distraction. But Macallan, I've actually got a box down here. I know why I'm retaining this box, but I probably shouldn't be. But it's very, very, very subtle. Glencadam, it's less subtle. Let me put this, pop me on full screen for a second. It's the cut of the paper label on the Glencadam bottles is the exact same angle as the roofline on Glencadam Distillery. Whereas on Macallan, it's really quite different. If you look at the very, very different angles of the A's on the Macallan word mark, I hope that works. Can you see that the A's, oops, go here, come on, stay focused. They all follow the contours of the roof of Macallan Distillery. Very, very, very subtle. Very typical Macallan, you might say, but it's there. So I thought that was interesting. So Glencadam and Macallan was correct. If you said A and B, give yourself a point as Glenn Duncan's in. The generous guy we mentioned earlier tonight, he's here and he's bought me a dram. No comment or anything, Glenn, but let me raise a wee glass to you just to say thanks, buddy. I hope you and Sharon are both keeping very, very well. Thank you, my friend. Question 4. Which brand's core lineup features a flagship matured in bourbon and sherry, as well as a 14-year-old in rum and a 21-year-old in port? Which brand's core lineup features a flagship in bourbon and sherry, a 14-year-old in rum, and a 21-year-old in port? A, Balvenie and Speyside, B, Speyburn and Speyside, or C, Glencadam in the Eastern Highlands? Balvenie, Speyburn, or Glencadam? Far too easy for you. This should have been question 1 or 2, really, when I look at the answers rolling in here. Nobody's tripping up on this one. Steve Wilson's here. Good to see you, Stephen. Dorpass Whiskey playing along. James Morgan's here. Lachlan McKenzie as well. Daisy's playing along. Sam Davison. Nice to welcome you here, Sam. Good to have you in. Excess to Scotch. Oh, he's already slipped up. He's on a 3 out of 4. And Romeo is going with an A on this one as well. I can tell you absolutely the double wood from Balvenie is bourbon and sherry cask. That's the double wood. 14-year-old is Caribbean cask. The 21-year-old, they also had a 17-year-old as well, didn't they? But 21-year-old portwood too. We don't tend to talk about Balvenie much, but I'm always charmed when I have a good Balvenie. Question 5. Here we have a distillery. We have 2 wee ventilators on the roof, subtle wee ventilators. I just want you to tell me where we might be in this distillery. Are we A, in Scotland, B, in England, or C, in Ireland? Where are we? Brian Caballes is in. He's bought me a dram. Thank you so much, Brian, for your generosity. Down in Australia, he's saying hello, Roy, the Barflies. I'll catch up on the replay. Feeling under the weather here and down under. Hopefully well enough for my Scottish visit. Slantia Whiskey Mates. When is your Scottish visit? Remind me when that is, Brian. I hope it's in the diary, buddy. I think it is. I'm sorry to hear that you're a wee bit poorly and under the weather. I have been poorly myself recently, and it's horrible to try and shake it off. And I hope you're successful, my friend. Rest up. Give yourself a break. Don't push yourself too hard. All the advice I tend not to follow myself, right? Brian, get well soon, buddy. Nice to have you in, and thanks for the dram. Greg is suggesting this could be tricky. Then he goes on to say, oh no, he's going to follow Ben. Going with the crowd, says Dan DVDW. He's saying, I'm not too familiar with a lot of non-Scotch distillery looks. Okay, so he's not in Scotland. So he's looking like he's going with B and following the crowd as well. Daisy is saying Cotswolds. James Morgan is saying Cotswolds. Your eyes are just far too sharp. Spot on, we are looking at the Cotswolds Distillery in the Cotswolds in southwest England. English distillery. Well done, everyone. Going to be some high scores tonight, maybe, or can the tricky banana skins in the second part of the quiz cause some attrition? Question 6. Which of these facts is true about Ardbeg's Spectacular? I'm going to give you 3 facts. Only one of them is the truth. A. Ardbeg Spectacular is 46% ABV and exclusively from port casks. B. It was labelled a phenolic phenomenon. Or C. It was their official release for 2025. 3 statements about Ardbeg's Spectacular release. Tell me which one is true. 5 out of 5 is a pass, John. Ginger Genius is celebrating already. Also on 5 out of 5 celebrating their pass mark already is George P. Big Jimmy Jazz, Fraser Ewan, Nicholas. Good to see you guys. Greg, Steve Atkiss, Where's Roy, Sugar Kitty, Ben Demon Hunter, Dan DVDW, Jesper Bach, Rick Johnson, Scott Thor, Stephen Wilson, Gene Kelly, Mike Molasses, Lachlan McKenzie, Jerry Miller, Ian Bruce, Daisy, Ben, and Warner, the one glass man, alongside Kel Taylor as well. Lots and lots of you in a 5 out of 5 tonight. Very well done. Almost everyone saying B for this one, although Everwind and Ian Bruce admits that they're guessing or going with the crowd. Excess to Scotch is celebrating a 5 out of 6 or a pass, so he's confident about this one, I can tell you. That 46% ABV is correct, but it was not exclusively from port casks. It was a vatting of port and bourbon. It was their face shield release for 2024, not 2025, which means B, by process elimination. It was labelled a phenolic phenomenon. Question 7. Complete the statement correctly. Breval Distillery, A, features a pagoda atop its kiln. Breval Distillery, B, features a tall red chimney. Or C, Breval Distillery made almost nothing from 2002 until 2008. We almost never... Breval's one of these under the radar distilleries, right? Breval or Braes of Glenlivet. We just hardly ever are able to touch it. Kyle Taylor is saying, oh wait, read the full question. There is a banana skin here. We have to be careful. 6 out of 10 with 2 lucky guesses, says Everwind. Take it, Chris, take it. Yalpin is saying 6 out of 6, but no idea about this one. So it's up to you. There's some disagreement here. It was splitting between A and C on this one. Love Breval, says Greg, but don't remember. Malt Whiskey Yearbook is too far also. Say A by pure chance. I can tell you that there is a pagoda roof at Breval, but it's not on top of a kiln. It's an ornamental pagoda roof. It's not on top of any kiln. It features a tall white chimney, and it was mothballed between 2002 and 2008 and made almost nothing. So if you were one of the ones who said C on this banana skin, you get yourself a point. Warner, the One Glass Man, is taking it. Alongside Lachlan McKenzie, Justin Wan, Jerry Miller, Gene Kelly, Scott Thor, Mike Molasses, Steve Atkiss, Whiskey with Molly Allen, Sevens, Jesper Bach, Kyle Taylor, George P, Sugar Kitty, everyone, Chris, Ginger Genius, lots and lots of sevens, more and more and more just pouring in. Let's see if we can keep it going. In 2016, Swiss writer Patrick Brossard wrote a book about which legendary distillery? A, Patrick Brossard wrote a book about Bruichladdich, or it was B, Brora, or Patrick Brossard wrote a book about Ferrintosh. 2016, Swiss writer Patrick Brossard wrote a book about which legendary distillery? A, Bruichladdich, B, Brora, C, Ferrintosh. Chris, everyone to see. I think my luck is going to run out. Chris, it's really nice to see you here, buddy. You've been here a long, long time. Don't know if you've retired now. I remember your job. I remember the wee care package that you'd sent me a couple of times. Fantastic. It's wonderful to still see you here. Sandro Fazzolari is in as well. Fantastic, Sandro. Just home from an event. I caught the last question. I'm glad I'll catch it on the replay. Terrible question 7. Well, you can come at it again when it's coming the second time round. You get it right this time, Sandro. Nice to have you. Who the hell has tried a Ferrintosh, to be honest? Well, it depends how you define Ferrintosh. Some people might have tried a Ben Wyvis. I certainly haven't, but some people think that one of the Ben Wyvis iterations was actually Ferrintosh. But Ferrintosh became more than one distillery. It became a mythical place, right? I can tell you that Patrick Brossard wrote a book about B, Brora, the legend of Brora. I cherish my virtual friends in the vPub and you as well, Slancha, my friend. That's really nice, Chris. Thank you, buddy. Thank you. Question 9, second from last. Which rebuilt distillery is said to accidentally make an identical new make to its previous incarnation, despite the fact that after it was rebuilt, the only thing that it shared with its previous incarnation was its water source and an exact location? So what we're talking about here is a distillery that was purchased and rebuilt to such an extent that the only things that they kept from the previous iteration of the distillery were receiver tanks and receiver vessels. Everything else had to be made brand new. The new owners then set about making multiple variations on the new make spirit until they settled on something that they were happy with, something that they wanted to make going forward. Here's a clue. Previous owners were Diageo, and Diageo gave the new owners some new make that was harvested from the old distillery that was long lost. It ended up being almost identical to the new make spirit that they were making at the new distillery. Am I talking about A, Glenburgie, B, Benromach, or C, Wolfburn? Tough one, says Greg's Whiskey Guide. Yeah. Yep. I read this in Charlie McLean's book. It would have been Whiskeypedia, the latest, most up-to-date version of Charlie McLean's Whiskeypedia. And it was a little fact that I had never heard before, and I enjoyed it very much. And the attrition happens before we get to the asshat. I can tell you, and not a lot of people will remember, that a Flora and Fauna release once came from Benromach. Benromach was closed and stripped, basically salvaged for parts and left in a ridiculous state. G&M came in the 1990s and bought it over and spent years rebuilding and reformulating what they wanted to make. After they were making the new spirit and they were up and running, Diageo donated new make spirit to them. And the new make spirit was almost identical. And the only things that they had that matched the previous iteration was just water source and exact location. Benromach is the answer I was looking for there. Now we roll into the asshat at the end. I don't know if anyone's managed to hold on to a 9 out of 9 after that really tricky one. No, we have Jerry Miller on a 9 out of 9. We have Steve Atkins on a 9 out of 9. Wow. Wow, wow. 8 out of 9, sorry, people, Ben. People have been following Ben, that's the thing. It's Ben effect, the Whiskey with Molly effect, the Graham Fraser effect. There's quite a few people out there that people kind of follow, and which is absolutely fine. 9 out of 9 for Warner, one glass one. This could be my second ever 10 out of 10. Well, there's a few other. Jerry Miller. Who else did I see? Was there another 9 out of 9? Steve Atkins, yeah. Steve Atkins, Jerry Miller, and Warner over in Florida. Let's see what the asshat is shaping up like tonight. Many distilleries have used the Glenlivet suffix, but how many operating distilleries are physically located in the Glenlivet Valley today? So we've had all sorts of Glenlivets over the years using, Speyside or vaguely Speyside distilleries using the Glenlivet suffix. But I'm asking you, how many distilleries are actually in the Glenlivet Valley today? A, is it around the same as the number of operational Campbelltown distilleries? Is it around the same as the number of B, aquavitae releases to date? That's bottling releases. Or is it C, around the same as the number of times the word Springbank is written on a bottle of Springbank 10-year-old. This, ladies and gentlemen, this whisky folk is the definition of asshattery. In order to get a 10 out of 10, you need a bit of knowledge. Of course, you've got loads of knowledge, but you also need a wee bit of luck. And you need a wee bit of patience, mostly patience with me. RB Milk 7083 has bought me a dram. No comment or anything, RB. I'm not sure what your handle is. RB could be Robert, could be Richard, could be Rick, could be so many things. But I'm very, very grateful, regardless of what your name is, that you would stop in to buy me a wee dram. Thank you very much. In Slantia to you. How many operational Glenlivet distilleries do we have actually in the Glenlivet Valley? Is it A, the same as the operational distilleries we have in Campbelltown? Is it B, the same as the number of Aqua Vitae releases that have been released to date? Or is it C, the number of times the word Springbank is written on a bottle of Springbank 10-year-old? Horrible, horrible, horrible stuff. If this quiz catches fire, I had nothing to do with it, says Molasses. Well done, Ben. Well done, Whiskey with Molly. I can tell you that Operation Campbelltown Distilleries, numbers 3. Aqua Vitae releases to date, numbers 10. And the number of times the word Springbank appears on a core range bottle of Springbank 10 is 7. I don't know if that helps you, but you've got a couple of seconds to change your mind before I reveal that Ben Whiskey with Molly is right on the money when he says Breval, Tamnavulin, and the Glenlivet. Only 3 distilleries are operational in the Glenlivet Valley today. So the answer was A. How many managed a 10 out of 10 tonight? I can't imagine it's too many. Okay, oops. I think it's going to be quite tricky, right? I count 5 Springbanks on my bottle of Springbank 10. That's okay. You can look again and remember to include the little clue I gave everyone when I was looking at the Springbank bottles earlier tonight, the little inkjet date code, batch code that's also on the glass. Springbank's written about 3 or 4 times on the back label, a couple of times on the front label. Jerry Miller is on a 10 out of 10. We have 1. We do have 1. We have 2. Steve Atkiss managed a 10 out of 10 as well. Oh, wow. What happened to Warner? 1 Glassman, 2nd ever 10. So we managed to get at least 3 of you over the line with a 10 out of 10 tonight. And let me tell you, that's something to celebrate, because that was a tricky, wee slippery quiz tonight. But it also did a lot to demonstrate just how bloody knowledgeable our community has become. 9 out of 10. Still think Glenburgie had a similar thing with their new make. I remember reading it, but I'll take the 9 and the double at the end of May. Ben, you're some man, fella. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Justin Wan has bought me a dram. So generous. Okay, I found all 7. He's picked it all up. He agrees with me. We're in agreement. Thanks, Justin, and he's bought me a dram to say as much. Listen, I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed putting a bit of thought into things. I enjoyed going back over the previous Permashelfs and considering how things have changed. But more than anything, I enjoy sitting with you and sharing all of that thinking after I've thunk. It's a pleasure. It always is a pleasure for me. I've enjoyed another 2 or 3 hours, 2 hours, 38 minutes of whiskey time with you again this week. And I look forward to bringing it back again next week. 2 weeks from now will be a closed down week as I'm away at the Campbelltown Malts Festival. I won't be able to bring you a vPub during that week, but there's time on the 30th, right at the end of May, for me to bring another vPub with you. So there will be at least 3 vPubs in May, and probably a lock-in as well for patrons and Guardian supporters as well. Until all of that, until next week, I'll be very careful to make sure I'm thanking you all for all your support, all the different ways that you enable me to continue doing this and for it to be so much fun. Yes, I love it when we can hang out together in real life, at the festivals, at the events, wherever it may be. But in the meantime, it's nice just to relax here a little bit with you. It's a privilege, Scottish, saying thanks as always. Aquavite, it's a pleasure for me, Scott, sorry. John is saying, great vPub, Roy, thanks. And Daisy saying, thanks for another fab vPub and good night, everyone. Daisy, Scott, John, Ben, everyone, thank you for hanging out with me this Thursday night. I look forward to welcoming you all back here again next week. But until then, I'll raise a glass to remind you all that you're very dearly loved. And until then, Slanjava to you. See you next week, and cheers.